Connected, modern. Discover life-enhancing independent living services at Trio Orem. Joy isn't just for the young, it's for the young at heart. Trio's signature programs provide a unique approach to wellness, bringing living well and well-being to life. Trio is reimagining retirement to deliver delight in every detail. To learn more, contact Trio Orem at 801-434-8000 or visit treeorem.com.
Hey, Derek Overstreet here from the New Millennium Group, financial advisors in Utah. You know, I've been helping people retire in the state of Utah for the last 20 years. The way we do that is we actually find out what is important to you. We create a step-by-step plan that takes into consideration your income, your debt, whether you want money from real estate, stock market, annuities, life insurance, whatever. If you want to deal with professionals, people that are fiduciaries and have a legal responsibility and obligation to do what's in your best interest, give my team a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Or go to my website, utahsfinancialplanner.com. If you'd like to retire 3 to 5 years before you thought it was possible, give my team a call right now. 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370.
Attention smart homeowners. You don't have to fall for flashy promises and companies that don't even prove their work. At Your Service Pros uses third-party verification software called MeasureQuick to ensure your new HVAC system is installed correctly. This ultimate game changer in the HVAC industry lets you, the homeowner, have proof of how your system was installed. At Your Service Pros utilizes our Bluetooth tools to upload all of your system's information into MeasureQuick. We rely on data-driven insights to properly commission, optimize, and fine-tune your HVAC system for peak performance, improving your family's comfort, lowering your utility bills, and extending the life of your HVAC system. With rebates and tax credits available totaling more than $7,500 on a dual fuel heating and cooling system, it is now more important than ever that your HVAC system be installed correctly. So call us today at 801-YOUR-PRO. That's 801-YOUR-PRO. Have the peace of mind of saving up to 50% on your new system and knowing it's installed correctly by calling 801-YOUR-PRO.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Sandy Farnsworth is in the traffic center.
A little bit of slowing, 215 Tim eastbound near State Street along that south end. We've got a little bit of delay on the ramp from North 15 on to I-80 in South Salt Lake. That delay we had driving through Salt Lake is cleared on I-15, but Legacy lane restriction slowdowns now on the southbound side going towards 500 South westbound. It's been northbound slowdowns all morning, and now it's flipped to the other side. Today only, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., UCCU is offering a code for the September 30th The Band Camino concert. Find pre-sale code on all UCCU social media sites. I'm Andy Farnsworth in the KSL Traffic Center.
Mix of sun and clouds, and most of the thunderstorms will stay in the mountains. About a 20% chance today. 85 degrees, but you better enjoy that while you can because the 80s will be gone by the weekend. If you have outdoor plans Saturday and Sunday, just beautiful, 93 and 97, a little warm. Right now in Salt Lake City, 67 degrees. At KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, your all-day companion for news.
Dave and Dujanovic, your morning companions for talk, analysis, and key perspectives on Utah's biggest stories on KSL News Radio. Dave and Dujanovic, special coverage of the top national story.
And this morning, the top national story is information coming out of the Supreme Court. And instead of Dave and Dujanovic this morning, you have Derek Brown and Greg Skordas, who are legal experts, so to speak. At least we're both lawyers, so we can talk about these Supreme Court opinions. Unfortunately, Derek, they just came out an hour ago, and so we're trying to read them.
We're still processing.
And they're really long. I mean, these are like 30, 40 pages. Even the justices reading their opinions are still going this morning as we're watching that.
Exactly. And for those who are not the legal nerds and actually, don't take the time to read through these things, and Greg and I were just doing that right before, when this came out. I mean, the affirmative action case is literally hundreds of pages of legal analysis.
Right.
And so we'll sort of process this the next couple of hours, but sort of give you an overview of what it is that happened, because this is big news, Greg, isn't it? I mean, this is an issue that's been controversial for as long as I can remember, since the Backey case in, 78,
Right.
76, 78?
Right. And this is one that I think we've been waiting for as much as anything, Derek. This was a lawsuit brought by Students for Fair Admissions against the University of North Carolina, and another lawsuit which brought against Harvard University. Now, there's a little bit of a distinction, and I think we'll break that down with our next guest, because one is a public and one is a private university. But both dealt with whether or not it was appropriate for those universities to use race as a factor in admissions. In other words, affirmative action. Those universities had been using affirmative action for decades, apparently, in their admission process. Students have challenged that, and the Supreme Court today said that under the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, which bars racial discrimination by government entities, their policies at those two universities were wrong, and they've been shut down. So effectively, affirmative action as it is in higher education, and we don't know, Derek, whether this is going to go further into employers, or employment law, or other things, perhaps housing, anything like that. But in terms of education, higher education, affirmative action is not something that universities can now take into account in their admission process.
Exactly. Now, they can still use other factors.
Right.
And for years, I think a lot of the universities have been using a lot of things beside simply race.
Right.
Right. I mean, the real question, I think what universities have been trying to get at is that early on when this started, race almost was a stand-in for opportunity.
Right.
Right. And so really they were looking at race as a function of if someone were from a particular race, that was indicative of less opportunity. And so there's other things I think that universities look at. If you're the first person in your family to ever go to college, for instance, I mean, things like that. But this is big in that the way they've been doing it. I mean, the court has, and this was a 6-3 opinion today.
Yeah, there were
3 of the justices.
The 3, as you might expect, more liberal justices. This would be Sotomayor, Kagan, and the new Justice Jackson dissented and really took some shots at the Supreme Court and basically said, and I'm looking at some language here, this setback where we've gone in racial relations by 20 years, I mean, rolls back decades of progress. This is some language from the dissent. I don't know. This is one of those issues, and we've been waiting for this opinion for a long time. We heard the arguments in the fall, Derek, and I think that most legal analysts that were listening to those arguments could sort of see the way the wind is blowing, and I think that's no surprise that affirmative action in higher education was struck down. It just something we were waiting for, and it could have gone either way, but I think a lot of us expected the very decision that came out today.
Exactly. And some of the best ways from those of you who take the time to actually look at the legal analysis, I mean, a lot of times when these controversial cases come out, I go right to the dissenting opinion. I don't know about you, Greg, but that's always where the fireworks are.
Right.
Because the opinion of the court is very, stated in a sort of neutral and objective way, but the dissenting judges always come out swinging. So, for instance, here is what the dissenting opinion was authored by Justice Sotomayor, and she, right out of the chute, here's how she characterizes it. She says, "Today, this court stands in the way and rolls back decades of precedent and momentous progress."
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it says, in so holding, the court cements a superficial rule of colorblindness as a constitutional principle in an endemically segregated society.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty politically charged way to put it. But
Sure
that's,
it is.
I mean, she's not holding back. I mean, you can tell this is someone who feels passionately about this and feels like we're going backwards.
And there's some language in some of the majority opinion that we don't really need affirmative action anymore, that we are more homogenous in our colleges and universities. I think the dissent is saying, wait a minute, we haven't come as far as you might think. There's still some need to recognize that colleges don't necessarily reflect the community at large in terms of their admissions, in terms of the makeup of their student body as opposed to the makeup of the populace at large. And maybe we should sort of help that a little bit. But the Supreme Court said we're not doing that anymore.
Well, and the way that this has been implemented through the years, I think, we've seen that the weight of the system itself may be what sort of broke this down over time. And you see, I mean, one of the kind of the elephant in the room that a lot of people have kind of, I think, avoided talking about is the fact that if you truly look at numbers and sort of objective standards in terms of admission, that a higher ed in terms of, like, say, Ivy League schools would be something in the neighborhood of 40% Asian, simply because the numbers, the testing numbers are just off the charts. And so it used to be sort of a black versus white thing, and now you see a lot of other dynamics coming into play. And so it's really an interesting, I think an interesting moment in American history, where I think what universities are going to do, and it'll be interesting because we'll talk to some people in higher ed here shortly, but I think what they'll start doing is, rather than looking at race, they'll look at other indicators. What is it that indicates that someone may be from a disadvantaged community or background or situation? And, I think this is an effort to equalize. And so my guess is universities will probably look at other ways of doing that.
And I think they already are. We'll probably learn more about that. I do want to talk about one other case before we break, Derek, and that is that this was a case involving, we would call it religious accommodation. We've only got a minute here, but we are going to break this one down later. A man who was a evangelical Christian, worked for the Postal Service. At the time he started there, of course, as we all know, mail's delivered Monday through Friday, but the Postal Service contracts with Amazon and started delivering on Sundays. And so he said, hey, I have other things to do on Sunday, and you need to accommodate my religious preferences. The post office tried to do that. They took some steps to accommodate him. He ultimately quit and filed lawsuit. And the Supreme Court, and this was a unanimous decision, really felt like apparently the post office should have gone further, and their sort of de minimis efforts were not enough, that they have to take some substantial steps. So that's another one, religious accommodation. I think it's very important, and we are going to talk to an expert on that one as well after the break. So stay with us. We've got, there's even a third opinion. we might touch on it.
Exactly.
We get a little bit of time, Derek. But we've got some people coming in, some experts after the break. Breaking news from the United States Supreme Court. A lot of fun for us legal geeks. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dave and Dujanovic.
Did you know Utah has just one all-news station in the morning?
It's this one. Weekday mornings between 5 and 9.
Start your days with us. We're Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
Your morning companions for news.
Summer in Utah means road trips and road work. This week, get information on the construction that will affect how you get around, roadwork plans around the state, repairs to potholes, and a future project in Spanish Fork. Summer construction, this week on KSL News Radio.
Well, summer's here, and of course, a lot of activities come along with it. But if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling sluggish, if you're not feeling good about yourself, you may just find yourself missing summer sitting on the couch. It's time to shift the game. SOTA Weight Loss, SOTA, stands for state-of-the-art weight loss, because it is state-of-the-art, is your path to actually be able to get out and enjoy your summer. The pounds and inches fall away because it's based on science. You have your own nutritionist and coach to help you along the way. And I'm not the only one who's had great success. I lost 37 pounds, got me off the couch, got me back engaged in all kinds of activities, and you can do the same. It's really simple. You've heard me say it before when it comes to your SOTA weight loss journey. There's no time to lose. There's only time to win. So start winning. Summer's just right here, and it's a great chance for you to get in the game, get control of your health and wellness, and project a better future. Check it out at sotaweightloss.com, SOTA weightloss.com.
I can't wait for what's next. Even with higher stroke risk due to atrial fibrillation and irregular heartbeat not caused by a heart valve problem. Eliquis, the Pixaban tablets, reduces stroke risk. It's the #1 cardiologist-prescribed blood thinner.
Don't stop taking prescription Eliquis without talking to your doctor, as this may increase your risk of stroke. Eliquis can cause serious and, in rare cases, fatal bleeding. Don't take Eliquis if you have an artificial heart valve, abnormal bleeding, or have antiphospholipid syndrome. While taking, you may bruise more easily or take longer for bleeding to stop. A spinal injection while on Eliquis increases risk of blood clots, which may cause paralysis, the inability to move. Get medical help right away for unexpected bleeding or unusual bruising, or if you have tingling, numbness, or muscle weakness. It may increase your bleeding risk if you take medicines such as aspirin products, NSAIDs, SSRIs, SNRIs, and blood thinners. Tell your doctor about all planned medical or dental procedures. Learn more at Eliquis.com or call 1-855-ELIQUIS.
What grows in the forest? Trees? Sure. Know what else grows in the forest? Our imagination. our sense of wonder, and our family bonds grow too. Because when we disconnect from this and connect with this, we reconnect with each other and build family memories we will carry with us forever. The forest is closer than you think. Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. It's easy. Just put in your zip code to find family-friendly outdoor destinations near you. You'll also find guides to free activities, games, and amazing forest facts. Give the magic of the outdoors to your kids and reconnect with your family. Find a forest near you at discovertheforest.org. That's discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel you attract people who tend to be compulsive or abusive?
Do you have money problems because of someone else's drinking?
Are you afraid or embarrassed to bring your friends home?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Tim Hughes. First, a major ruling on affirmative action from the Supreme Court was released today. In a 6-3 decision, the court says colleges and universities must stop considering race in admissions. Second, another Supreme Court decision states that employers must put forth more effort to accommodate religious practices of their workers. And third, delays and cancellations continue to plague air travel for the 4th of July weekend. We're going to look for a high today of 85 degrees, and right now in Salt Lake City, it is 67. Now back to David Dujanovic on KSL News Radio.
Dave and Dujanovic, special coverage of the top national story.
Welcome back to David Dujanovic. I am your fill-in host today, Derek Brown, with my good friend and KSL's legal analyst, Greg Skordas. And it just so happens that we have, it's fortunate that we have KSL's legal analyst with us. Because this is a big day from a legal standpoint, isn't it, Greg?
It's really been interesting because we've been waiting for their final 6 or 7 Supreme Court opinions to come down. 3 of them came down today. One of them, dealing with affirmative action, was one that I think a lot of people have been waiting for. We'll talk about the other 2 as well as the show goes on. But we talked about affirmative action, broke it down during the last segment, sort of what it meant and what the Supreme Court did. Maybe no surprises about it and what the decision was, but it's a lengthy decision. You and I have been spending an hour here because it only came out at 8 o'clock this morning.
And there's only several hundred pages of legal analysis to be done here.
But. Yeah. But luckily, we have a law professor, Paul Cassell from the University of Utah, a dear friend of mine, former federal judge, to help us walk through this. Paul, thank you so much for joining us, especially on short notice.
You bet, Greg. Happy to chat about this.
So what's your initial take on this, Paul? Any surprises in the way the opinion came out and how it was decided?
Well, I think there was sort of an air of inevitability about this. 25 years ago, or maybe just a little bit less, Justice O'Connor was saying, look, affirmative action hopefully will be a thing of the past in 25 years. And the Supreme Court today is essentially saying that that time has come, that affirmative action has been tried and found wanting. It really doesn't seem to have had any measurable effects, says the opinion. And I think that was to some degree forecasted by Justice O'Connor long ago.
And so do you think that universities will find other ways to accommodate individuals who are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds? Or what, I guess you're in a university setting. Tell us what this means in terms of admissions. Like, what will change moving forward?
Well, I think what you see when you read the opinion is that Harvard and North Carolina made race a decisive factor for a significant fraction of the admission decisions. They didn't really undertake a holistic view or an individualistic view of applications. They simply, I think the disparaging phrase is, did bean counting to make sure they had a precise number of various underrepresented groups. And what today's decision says is, look, you can't sort of come up with a percentage of minority groups that you want to be represented in your entering class and then work backwards and fill those spots. The opinion specifically says, look, if someone has faced discrimination or comes from a disadvantaged background, that can very much be part of the admissions decision. But that can't be a decisive factor or based exclusively on race. There are many people who have faced discrimination for various reasons, and all of those reasons have to be taken into account.
Paul, a lot of us were watching this and wondering if and to what extent the Supreme Court might distinguish the two universities, one being public and one being private, in terms of their admission policies and the rules as it relates to admissions. But the Supreme Court didn't seem to distinguish the two universities much, did it?
No, from what I can tell, the decision is based on federal constitutional grounds, the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment. And, of course, that clause applies to both public and private universities. So I'm still wading through the opinions, as I suspect you are, but it doesn't really seem like that's going to be much of a difference. This, to bring it into our home state, both the University of Utah and Brigham Young University, to provide two prominent examples, will be working under exactly the same rules following today's opinion.
So, Paul, one of the other dynamics that I see that's really interesting is in the past, obviously, universities have used things like race in their admissions criteria, although kind of the deciding factors seem to have been standardized testing. And I'm seeing universities generally backing away from standardized testing. I mean, isn't it true that this year is the first year you've got a huge number of higher educational institutions that have basically said we're either backing away from slightly or not using at all things like ACT or SAT tests. And so, you know what I'm saying? Like you have those two dynamics going on, backing away from that, and now at the same time saying you can't use affirmative action either. So how does that impact higher ed?
Well, I think what we were seeing over the last year or so was perhaps anticipatory resistance to today's anticipated decision. I think what some of the schools have been recognizing is that it's fairly easy to document racial discrimination when you have quantitative measures such as GPA and LSATs or SAT scores being the decisive factor. So I think, to be candid, I think some schools have been sort of trying to fuzz up their admission standards so that then they can continue to engage in the same sort of race-based admissions processes that they had before today's decisions. And there's certainly going to be significant litigation after today's decision to try to figure out whether schools are faithfully implementing it or simply trying to continue what they've been doing in the past.
Paul, I don't know whether you've had a chance to look at the dissent, but some of the comments there, for example, this rolls back decades of progress, seem to be, the dissents are always a little bit, I think Derek said earlier, that's the first part he reads when he sees an
that's the
opinion
best
come.
part. I love those.
But what can you tell us about what we're hearing from the three dissenters?
Well, obviously, the words in the dissenting opinions are, as they say, words in the dissenting opinion. There are different points of view on affirmative action. It's a very controversial topic, as it's been for many decades here. So it's not surprising to see strongly worded dissents. The opinion that I've been looking at, the two opinions actually, Justice Thomas, I think, has been very eloquent in explaining how in many ways affirmative action is demeaning to African Americans since it assumes that they cannot compete on a level playing field with other applicants. And then Justice Gorsuch has a very interesting concurring opinion that talks about some of the categories that affirmative action uses. Asians are swept into a single category in many many universities, even though they constitute something like 60% of the world's population. So if that's going to be your measure of diversity, inevitably it's not going to be very precise, and certainly not precise enough to survive strict scrutiny, which is the standard that we've always used to measure racial categories.
Another thing, Paul, that we're looking at here is, and maybe it won't, but does affirmative action apply in other areas other than higher education? And would this opinion affect that? Or is this sort of limited to the facts of this case?
Well, I think higher education is one of the prominent areas where affirmative action is used, but certainly it's used by, let's say, major corporations. It's been used in other contexts as well. There's been some discussion about whether America's military uses it. So I think, after today's decision decisively striking down affirmative action in the higher education context, there's going to be follow-on litigation in other settings. And I would predict, obviously, this isn't a bold prediction, but I think an obvious prediction that those kinds of programs will be struck down if they are overtly making race the decisive consideration for, let's say, employment, promotions, and other things of that nature.
But, Paul, just to be clear, this decision applies just to higher ed, right? This doesn't have implications, at least legally, for anything beyond that.
Well,
I guess.
I hate to be a law professor here. Yes and no. I think, on its face, it applies to higher education. But no, if I were a major corporation right now and were to read this opinion and had an affirmative action program of the type that Harvard and North Carolina had, I would not be advising that corporation to move forward in the same way. I would be advising the corporation to restructure any program that it had to comply with today's decision.
Paul Cassell, University of Utah law professor. I can't thank you enough for joining us on such short notice, Paul, and you're always up to speed. We tried to cover this in the last segment, and I think Derek and I sort of stumbled through it, but you just nailed it, so hopefully our listeners now have a real clear understanding of what happened today. Thank you for joining us.
You bet. Always nice to be on.
And when we come back after the break, we are going to shift gears and talk about the religious accommodations case that also came out, but I think we'd like to follow up a little bit more on affirmative action. We're going to have another legal scholar, not that you and I are not holding up that flag very well, but we have people who are teachers and professors. They seem to hold the banner a little better. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
9:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Tim Hughes with our top stories this hour. And as you've been hearing with great analysis this morning, the Supreme Court has set new limits on affirmative action at colleges in a decision that impacts 40 years of precedent. ABC's Lindsay Watts has more from Washington.
The court ruled admissions programs that consider race violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The vote was 6-3 with the court's liberal minority dissenting. The court did preserve the consideration of race in a narrowly tailored way, like through an essay. A group called Students for Fair Admissions sued Harvard and the University of North Carolina, alleging illegal racial discrimination against Asian American and white applicants. The colleges argued using race as one admissions factor wasn't exclusionary and helped achieve campus diversity. Lower courts sided with the universities. Lindsay Watts, ABC News, Washington.
Two more rulings were issued by the Supreme Court today. The first was Groff v. DeJoy, stating now that an employer must grant religious accommodations to their employees unless granting that request would result in substantial increased costs to the company. The second case determined whether and when the Lanham Act applies to trademark infringement that occurs outside the United States. Other national stories we're following for you this hour. The Biden administration is rolling out a new plan to address homelessness among veterans. ABC's Faith Abube is at the White House with the latest.
The Biden administration plans to invest more than $3 billion in programs that will help homeless veterans across the country by putting a roof over their heads. The money, according to the White House, will go towards several support services like legal aid, resources to find jobs, and programs to quickly rehouse veterans experiencing homelessness. The Biden administration says homelessness among veterans has fallen by 11% since 2020, and these new actions will advance their goal to permanently house at least 38,000 veterans in 2023. Faith Abube, ABC News, the White House.
Let's look at the market. Your money at this moment. The Dow is up 221 now, closing in on 0.7%. The S&P is up 15 or 3%, 0.3%. The Nasdaq, which I'm reading headlines this hour, says may be on track to have its best first half of the year ever, is up 15, almost 16 points now. Coming up, we're going to see our first triple-digit temperature coming up just before the 4th of July. We'll check the forecast next. KSL News Time, 9:32.
This summer, the political season heats up.
By August, it'll be time for debates. Can you believe it?
We're planning coverage of the real issues, the important stories that impact how we live.
Listen each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Have you been waiting to buy a car until interest rates go down? I'm Josh Osborne with Volkswagen Southtown. With our rate cut sale, now there's no reason to wait.
Get 3.9 for 5 years at Volkswagen Southtown on any new car. And we have as low as 1.9 on used cars. Get the car you really want, like the Jetta, Tiguan, Taos, Atlas, or ID4 EV.
Save thousands in interest at Volkswagen Southtown, Utah's #1 Volkswagen dealer. Start shopping at VWSouthtown.com.
Claim since 2022. Financing through VCI on select models OAC. See dealer for details.
Everything's changing so fast these days, and that's a great thing. Back in my day, we were lucky if we could get one video to load on a desktop computer, but now there's the Xfinity 10G network. That means the fastest internet with faster speeds rolling out all the time, and internet that can power a house full of devices with ultra-low lag. So one person streams a movie from their room, another can play video games in the basement, while another TikToks in the kitchen. It's the next generation 10G network only from Xfinity. The future starts now. Through September 21st, new customers can get 1.2 gigabit internet with unlimited internet data and Wi-Fi equipment included. It's all just $25 a month for 2 years with no annual contract when you add Xfinity Mobile with unlimited data at regular rates. Go to Xfinity.com/10G, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today. Requires paperless billing and auto pay with stored bank account. Restrictions apply. Taxes and fees extra. Xfinity Mobile requires Xfinity Internet. After promo, regular rates apply to internet service and Wi-Fi equipment. Actual speeds vary.
Men who have given up in their intimate life because of prostate issues, testicular cancer, or simply no ED treatments you've tried have worked. It's not the end. At Summit Men's Health, they have a customized approach for each individual patient to get results they desire and deserve. Stop wasting your time and money with treatments that don't work for most men, like Shockwave, Viagra, or the shots. Summit Men's Health guarantees results in your first visit, or you don't pay. Call Summit Men's Health today and get the spark back in your relationship. Summit Men's Health, 435-500-2790. They're so confident this will work for you, they promise if you don't get results on your first visit, they pay you $500 cash, no questions asked. Call Summit Men's Health today at 435-500-2790. That's 435-500-2790 to get the passion back in your love life.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Heather Kelly, how are we looking?
We're looking pretty good. No accidents reported in the Salt Lake Valley or anywhere along the Wasatch Front right now, but the construction barrels are going out on Legacy Parkway southbound, right in Bountiful, so you're going to have slowdowns between Centerville and Woods Cross to go along with the slowdowns we've had all morning northbound Legacy through that same stretch, also due to construction. Everybody else traveling at speed right now. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
There'll be a mix of sun and clouds today. Most of the thunderstorms that are in the forecast should stay in the higher elevations up in the mountains. We'll top out at 85 with that 20% chance of showers, and the temperatures just in the last few minutes really took a jump, 71 now downtown. At KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, your all-day companion for news.
Dave and Dujanovic, special coverage of the top national story.
And welcome back to Dave and Dujanovic, but instead this morning you have Derek Brown and Greg Skordas, and we're breaking down some of the opinions that have come out of the Supreme Court. And Derek, we get here this morning sort of sitting on the edge of the seat, wondering which opinions are going to come out, trying to prepare for a show that starts live at 9 a.m., and we get the opinions at 8 a.m. I mean, they don't give us much of a heads up, and of course, the folks on the East Coast are starting at 10 o'clock, so they even get the less time if they're starting an early show. But we've tried to read them through. We've tried to go over these opinions. There were 3 substantial ones that came out today. We're waiting for 3 more, including the student loan forgiveness one. That opinion may
That's
come
a big
out
one,
tomorrow.
Yes.
But one we talked about that we haven't talked about too much is this religious accommodations, Religious Freedom Act, or law. And that one is really interesting because it relates to what efforts an employer has to make to accommodate an employee's desire for religious accommodations. In other words, somebody who wants to practice their religion on Sunday, what does an employer have to do to make it so that person can do that?
Exactly. And this dealt with a postal worker who was asked to work on Sunday, didn't want to do that. There was a burden apparently on the other members, his colleagues. And I think what they were trying to do is figure out how do we accommodate, both the need. I mean, it was the Postal Service contracting with Amazon, right? I mean,
Right.
usually
That's
there
why
isn't a
they're
whole lot
suddenly-
going on.
That's why they're suddenly delivering on Sundays.
Exactly.
Right.
So they're working with the private sector. But what's interesting is he filed suit based on religious accommodations under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And something the court doesn't do all the time, but they did today, they issued a unanimous decision in this case. I mean, they certainly didn't in the affirmative action case, but in this case, unanimous decision.
Yeah. So let's talk to Erica George, constitutional law professor at the University of Utah, my alma mater. Was that your alma mater as well?
It was not.
Oh, okay.
But,
we'll put you on the spot here then. Erica, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Go Utes.
There we go. Hey, my picture's on the wall up there if you look around. Anyway, tell us about this. Were you surprised by, Derek just said it was a unanimous opinion, which our Supreme Court hasn't done much lately.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This was not one that I'd followed as closely, but a unanimous opinion is a welcome one. There was a concurrence that I do think is worth noting. That does speak to the nature of what an undue burden is and where that burden falls. But I think this really is showing a consensus or consolidation on the court around questions of religious freedom. And as you said earlier, on the other hand, or on the other side of that, is what do employers or others have to do to accommodate that expression of religious faith? So this says they have to do more than, frankly, the bare minimum.
Yeah, so if you're an attorney advising a company in terms of this, what is the standard now? This sort of de minimis, you've got to do more than just that.
Sure.
The Supreme Court did lay out a standard, didn't they?
They did. What they are doing is clarifying some misreadings in lower courts of what a previous case, Harrison, had required of employers. And there was language in that spoke to more than de minimis burden. And that had been interpreted to mean any kind of inconvenience, or moderate increased cost to make an accommodation. And the court is signaling here that undue burden is the standard, and it needs to be a substantial hardship that impacts the way the employer does its business. So it isn't just a matter of administrative costs of having someone in to do a scheduling plan that accommodates someone who can't work on their Sabbath, whether that's Saturday or Sunday. It means more than that. So again, it's not in the notion, the way that courts write opinions, it's not crystal clear, but what does come through in this unanimous court opinion is that substantial hardship is something that is the standard, that mere inconvenience isn't, and that employers must do more to accommodate.
So is this different than the line of cases that I'm remembering now? I'm going back to my law school days and trying to, push past the PTSD of final exams. But I remember, there was a line of cases dealing with accommodating an individual's religious liberty and really interesting facts like, somewhat like prisoners, right? A prisoner and to what extent, they need to be accommodated by, say giving them
the warden, right?
Yeah, the warden giving them
right.
Exactly. There's a lot of fascinating cases. Is this different in terms of? Those seem to be more of a free exercise. Is this a different type of thing?
This is different, right? This is something that's decided with reference to statutory law. This is looking at Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. What we would have done in law school, and likely what you did, sorry for the PTSD, was look directly at the Religious Freedom Clause in the 14th Amendment. And one of the challenges has been the more you enable the free exercise of religion, there's a danger that you risk establishing a particular faith or favoring a particular faith. And that's something that policymakers, employers should want to get away from, not having a fixed, established, preferred faith. The court does make reference to many different commentators saying that people of all religious faiths, various religious faiths, have pointed out that how this standard had been interpreted was not protective enough of the employee that has a religious faith that prevents them from working on a particular day or requires an accommodation. So, yeah, there are earlier cases where people lost, right? And I'm thinking of not recognizing a Saturday Sabbath, and there's a dissent from Brennan in a case that points to people not being put in the position of having to balance their livelihood with their religious life. So I think this is making that kind of determination easier for the employee, and for an employer, they're on notice that accommodations are important. So this particular plaintiff actually had tried to accommodate himself. When he was at a station that worked on Sunday, he moved to another station that didn't work on Sunday. And it is an interesting wrinkle that serving a private sector firm, Amazon is what brought the U.S. Postal Service worker into this conflict with his religion. I mean, it kind of came to him. It's not something, the employment changed over time, and he tried to make adjustments, and this is now remanded back for additional action. The concurring opinion, which is by Justice Jackson and signed on by, a few other members of the court, speak to the hardships that would fall on other employees as accommodations are being made. So they agree that a reasonable accommodation is required, but caution that imposed undue hardship on other employees that would be contrary to other kind of collective bargaining rights should still be part of the equation. So really, if it is something that is making it difficult for the employer to do business, it must be a substantial burden. It can't be a mere inconvenience, and that ordinary in the conduct of business accommodations must be made.
Professor Erica George, constitutional law professor, University of Utah, thank you so much for joining us this morning on short notice. And it was amazing, by the way, Derek, to listen to her analysis of this. I mean, the opinion only came out an hour or so ago.
In real time, and you can hear the pages turning as she's looking through this. I love it. This is real-time analysis.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Well, thank you.
And when we come back after the break, we're going to stay on this topic a little bit because there's so much more to talk about here, and maybe get someone locally to tell us how this will affect what's going on in Utah. Join us in a few minutes.
Dave and Dujanovic. Hi, it's Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
Why should you start your day with us?
We have decades of news experience between us.
And we take your trust seriously.
Come here for news tomorrow, 5 to 9.
On KSL.
Yeah, I'm so stressed. Our business is growing. We've got people all over now.
Ooma.
What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending the Ooma cloud phone system with auto attendant and more than 50 features.
Ooma?
Yep. Switching to Ooma is a cinch. Just $24.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Find small business calm at ooma.com/radio. That's OOMA.com/radio.
You could throw your flip-flop at a bug.
Ew, a bug, get it.
But the chances of actually hitting it
over there
are statistically,
it's still alive.
Unlikely. Good thing nature's got your back. Stem bug killers combine powerful active ingredients found in plants, like lemongrass and geraniol, and scientifically engineer them into effective bug-fighting formulas, safe for use as directed around people, pets, and throughout the home. Stem. Rooted in nature, optimized by science.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and if you have a drain that's clogged or backed up, after you've tried the plungers and products, the next step usually involves some kind of drain snake or cabling equipment. You see, sometimes the blockage is far enough down the line that you need special equipment that most homeowners just don't have. That's where the Drains Department at Any Hour Services can help. A drain snake can clear most blockages and get the water flowing again, and clearing blocked drains is what our Drains Department does day in and day out. So if you're a homeowner with a drain line that's clogged or backed up and you'd like one of our drain technicians to come and snake the line for you, it's only $29. Yep, you heard that right. Any Hour Services will snake any drain line with normal access for only $29. Sinks, showers, tubs, toilets, floor drains, laundry drains, even that sewer main line that connects to the city. We'll snake any line for just $29. For help with your drain issues, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7700. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Get up and go. Hey there, it's Julie from Logan with a personal invitation. Here it is. Get in your car and come see us. This weekend, 1,000 classic cars roar into town for the spectacular Cache Valley Cruise-In Car Show and Parade. Come to the Gardeners Market on Saturday, where you can even pet a live turkey. Okay, that's kind of weird. We're headed into the holiday weekend, so there's rodeo on Saturday, Logan's super impressive Independence Day fireworks July 3rd, and more fireworks and parades on the 4th of July in the towns of Hiram and Lewiston. Step back in time at the American West Heritage Center all summer long. It's outdoor living history in a gorgeous setting. You can hang out with a mountain man, meet pioneers, and even learn to milk a cow if you want. Wait, just wait. The Lyric Rep Theater is doing live performances of the 1950s and 60s musical revue The Marvelous Wonderettes and a lavish big band production of Shakespeare's comedy Twelfth Night, plus other performances of The Wizard of Oz. Head to Logan. You won't break the bank on less than a tank. ExploreLogan.com.
Text us here in the studio and give us your opinion. The Cyprus Credit Union KSL text line at 57500.
It's only a minute of news. How long could it take? I do a lot of surfing late at night. I'm looking at all my favorite internet sources, Wall Street Journals, New York Times. People throw me ideas, but when I sit down in the morning and it's time to write, it has to resonate with me. I have to have something to say about it. It is my minute of news.
Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News, 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Tim Hughes. First, the Supreme Court has set new limits on affirmative action at colleges in a decision that impacts 40 years of precedent. Second, another Supreme Court ruling states that now an employer must grant religious accommodations to their employees unless granting that request would result in substantial increased costs to the company. And third, UDOT says drivers will find only minor road delays in the days leading up to July 4th because this year's celebration takes place on a Tuesday. We're going to look for a high today of 85 degrees, and we're on our way, 71 now in Salt Lake. As we get you back to David Dujanovic on KSL News Radio.
Dave and Dujanovic, special coverage of the top national story.
Welcome back to David Dujanovic. Filling in I am Derek Brown with my good friend and KSL's legal analyst, Greg Skordas. So instead of David Dujanovic, it's Skordas and Brown.
There you
which
go.
Sounds kind of like a law firm.
Right.
Which is probably appropriate considering what we're talking about today,
Yes,
right?
Yeah, we're staying with the Supreme Court all morning based on some opinions that have come out in the last few hours. They're interesting opinions. They're opinions we've sort of all been waiting for. Of course, there are a couple more. Maybe you and I are just geeky, but I think it's fun to talk about what's going on.
And this
to
is
follow the Supreme Court. Just in the last year, since the Dobbs decision came down, it seems like there's been more focus on the Supreme Court in our country than ever. Some good, some bad, but the focus itself, I think, is good from a civics perspective.
Absolutely.
From our young people in high school and college who are just following the Supreme Court, just to understand how laws are changing and what's going on in this country right now. And I don't know. I just read these opinions and I realize why these people are on the Supreme Court, because they're just so brilliant.
They are. Whether you like them or not or agree with them or not, they really are. And for those who don't follow this as closely as Greg and I do, the last week of June, this week right now, is traditionally when you get the end of the court. I mean, the court's term ends and they issue all the most controversial decisions. For whether it's a practical reason or a political reason or whatever, this is the week when all the biggies come out. So this is like Super Bowl season for Supreme Court watchers. And so we've been talking about the affirmative action case, which came down, and we've had 2 University of Utah professors, and so I think we're kind of U of U top heavy here.
Okay.
So to counteract that, we have someone who's taught at Utah State University, who's also a member of the Utah Senate. We have Senator John Johnson with us to talk about this case and the implications. So, Senator, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate being here, Derek. You and Greg are doing a great job.
Well, thanks. And am I correct that you've taught at USU?
Yes, I am currently on the faculty. So.
Okay, so we have a little
Yeah,
balance
Go
there.
Aggies. There
We've
go.
had 2 U of U professors this morning, so we're trying to kind of balance things out. Now, one of the things that's interesting and I think important for our discussion here is that you also are the chair of the Senate Education Committee, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this
Yes, and it's
decision.
interesting.
Yeah, tell us about this. How this impacts
Well,
things.
I just said it's interesting because we just had a confirmation committee hearing for members of the higher board, and this was a question that Senator Fillmore and I both asked about what happens with these diversity programs on campus when this decision comes out. If it rules against affirmative action, then what's going to happen?
And what was the answer? And give us your thoughts on what this looks like.
I don't think people thought a lot about it, but my personal opinion is these diversity programs actually have gone a little bit too far. Students now have to write a diversity statement in order to get into graduate school. The question is, what is that all about? Is that simply a head bow to this diversity agenda, or is it really to find out what class you belong to?
I think we lost him.
Sounds like he said something we disagreed with, so we cut him off. No, I'm kidding. We'll see if we get him back here momentarily.
We'll get him back on in a minute.
The reality is, a diversity statement can mean more than simply race, and I think the focus here was race. And as we heard in the last segment, actually, it was Judge Cassell that made the comment that one of the problems here with these decisions was that the universities that were using these programs were focusing on race almost as the deciding factor, as opposed to one of many factors to consider. Right, Greg? Isn't that sort of the
right?
It may have been the downfall of these these programs in the end.
It's interesting, though, that when he was talking, Senator Johnson, about his work with higher education, that in fact they were on top of this. They were thinking this was probably going, and how are we going to do things differently at our schools here in Utah? And he talked about students are having to write papers on diversity, or which is sort of an end run way of maybe sorting out the sort of affirmative action. So it was interesting. But anyway, we have Senator Johnson back. Senator Johnson, thank you for staying with us. Sorry we dropped you off there.
So you were talking about the diversity statement. So give us kind of a sense of what this looks like moving forward.
Well, that's really a good question, and it really changes the nature of the debate. Look, we need more minority students in our graduate programs, but we need to up our game in education. I think that's one of our problems, is that we really as a nation are a meritocracy, and we need to make sure that all of these kids are prepared to go into these programs.
Senator Johnson, one of our other KSL at Night hosts, Leah Murray, she has talked to us a little bit. She's a professor, and she's the executive director of the Walker Institute up at Weber State, and I think we lost Senator Johnson again. But, Derek, she was talking the other day about the fact that Weber State doesn't use race as a factor in admissions, except sometimes, and I don't want to misquote her because Leah's probably listening, in the graduate program up there. So I don't know that this decision is going to make a big difference in terms of Utah colleges and universities and admissions, but certainly things like Senator Johnson were just talking about, papers and other programs at the school may change a little bit because of this decision.
Exactly. And this really is historic because, I mean, the first big decision, and I learned about this in law school maybe 30 years ago, was in 1978 when the court said you can use this. And then they rolled it back a little bit about 25 years later. And then today they've said not at all.
We have Senator Johnson back with us. I assume you're driving in Sardine Canyon or something, because every time I go...
No, I'm not actually. I have 5 bars on my phone. I'm down in St. George. But
Oh, there you go. All right. So tell us what the future looks like for Utah's colleges and universities as it relates now to this opinion. What do you think is going to change, at least in the next year or so?
We certainly have problems with, first-time college students, maybe kids from lower demographic areas. We need to focus our programs on them, if that's really the problem, right? But like I was saying before, the most important thing is we need to stop coddling the American mind, and we need to have high expectations for students, and we need to teach them to be prepared. Reading, writing, math.
Right. Although, it seems like the idea behind affirmative action, and I agree with everything you've said, Senator Johnson, was good, but maybe this is a step back to say, wait a minute, it does fly in the face of equal protection, and maybe we need to just be fair and across the board. So I take it that you're not particularly upset by this opinion today.
No, in fact, I think it's moving in a positive direction. Look, this isn't about white supremacy or anything else. This was brought by Asian students, right? This is about equal protection under the law.
It's interesting because I was watching the plaintiffs in this lawsuit, Senator, just being interviewed, and you're right, it was brought by Asian students who I was just a little surprised by that, because you think, well, maybe they're thinking they're more or less protected by affirmative action, but apparently there was some group that felt maybe they were not.
Yes. Senator John Johnson, thank you for joining us on KSL this morning to talk about this opinion. We appreciate it. And this is a big morning in terms of Supreme Court cases, and so we'll continue to cover this live on KSL. Also at 10:30, President Biden will be speaking about this very issue, and we will break live to cover that as well.
And maybe some of the other presidential candidates, find out what their reaction is to this. We're getting a lot of reactions, and it's really been interesting.
Exactly.
We'll be back right after the break.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
Good morning, 10 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. KSL's top story this hour: one person is dead following an overnight shooting in Weber County. Authorities say they found a 50-year-old man shot multiple times in a yard around 11 o'clock last night. He later died at the hospital. One suspect has been taken into custody after police think they fled to a nearby city. Police are still investigating. July 4th travelers should plan on some small road delays, but Utah's Department of Transportation says it's a lot better than it could be. KSL News Radio's Peter Johnston has more.
The good news is holiday traffic will probably be spread out among a few days, since July 4th falls on a Tuesday this year instead of on the weekend. UDOT says I-15 northbound will likely see 10-minute delays on Friday in Salt Lake and Davis counties, and the same will be with I-15 southbound near Nephi. You'll probably see fewer of those bright orange cones out because UDOT will be putting a pause on most of its construction projects during the holiday.
Projects to plan around are I-70 near Cove Fort and US 40 north of Heber City. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: heat and smoke is pummeling the southern United States, and air quality alerts have been issued for much of the eastern part of the country. CDC reported over 1,000 heat-related illnesses per 100,000 emergency department visits in Texas yesterday. Your money at this moment looking good. The Dow's up 231 to 34,886. The S&P up 16. The NASDAQ up 12. Coming up, the heat is ramping up. KSL weather's next. KSL News Time 10:01.
Early morning
mornings can be hard enough, just getting yourself going.
We try to make it a little easier with news and weather from comfortable, trusted anchors and reporters.
Join us on Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9
on KSL News Radio.
Text us here in the studio about the weather in your area. The Cyprus Credit Union KSL text line is 57500.
Don't miss America's Freedom Festival in Utah County, a celebration with a mission to teach the honor and patriotism of our great nation. Take in Utah's largest July 4th Grand Parade, Freedom Days in downtown Provo, Balloon Fest, and Colonial Fest in Orem, followed by the state's biggest fireworks show and concert, Alta Bank Stadium of Fire, featuring Journey. For information, visit freedomfestival.org. freedomfestival.org.
The roar of our engines, the pump of our heartbeats, the pedal to our metal, the sparks that ignite us, the pistons that push us, the passions that drive us. From the feelings that move us to the places that pull us on the roads that unite us. With nearly 6,000 stores and over 17,000 auto care centers, Napa has America's largest network of parts and care, here to keep you firing on all cylinders.
At Shane Company, we believe everybody is made to shine. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. Shining is not for a chosen few. Like a rare gemstone, each one of us was created under just the right set of circumstances. Your moments, your milestones, your love story, all deserve to shine bright. You don't need an occasion or an invitation. You and your life are the event. At Shane Company, we handcraft our jewelry with the greatest care and hand select the most beautiful gemstones so you can shine. So put on a pair of earrings that make your eyes sparkle. Wear diamonds that light up the room. Try on sapphires in every color of the rainbow. Give an heirloom that collects new stories with each generation. We're all made to shine. Shane Company, fine jewelry since 1929.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's High Yield Savings Certificates. We've got Heather Kelly in the traffic center.
Well, Kira, the worst travel right now is in Davis County. Legacy Parkway, both northbound and southbound, have stop-and-go traffic between Woods Cross and Centerville. That is due to road construction. You're down to one lane both directions. We also have a crash in Bountiful. This is on southbound 400 north at 500 west. The left lane and the median are blocked, and traffic is backing up in that far right lane. But hopefully once it's cleared, everybody will start moving as they should. Fill up your bucket list in Box Elder County. History, recreation, and wildlife, along with excellent dining and shopping, await you. Find out more at visitboxeldercounty.com. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. Today's the last day to expect cool conditions. There's some dry air moving in, so you can expect thunderstorms this afternoon. And then we're going to heat up. This little heat wave that's coming is going to take us to 100 degrees on Monday, just in time for a nice hot 4th of July. But right now it's only 71 degrees and partly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Dave and Dujanovic. Dave and Dujanovic.
Welcome back to the Dave and Dujanovic Show. This morning you have Greg Skordas and Derek Brown filling in for Dave and Dujanovic, and we spent the morning so far talking about the United States Supreme Court. Let's shift gears, Derek, and talk about politics, because I don't know whether a lot of our listeners are aware of this. I certainly was not, but we have another candidate, another person who's thrown his hat in the ring, apparently, for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2024.
And whose polling numbers are in the double digits at the moment.
Right. And whose last name would probably put him there no matter what he did.
Exactly.
We're talking about Robert F. Kennedy. He was on News Nation yesterday talking about his presidential bid. And it was interesting. You had a video or something that you were showing earlier. And
he's gone viral on YouTube.
Yeah,
I mean, not that I'm recommending anyone do this, but if you do a search for Robert F. Kennedy working out, I mean, the guy is, I think months away from turning 70, and he looks like a 40-year-old bodybuilder.
Yeah, I think he was mentored by one of his distant relatives, Arnold Schwarzenegger, a few years ago, who taught him. I mean, and I'll tell you, I was watching that. He's doing some push-ups or something. He looks fit.
He's got what we call presidential pecs.
Yeah,
I think is
guess
the phrase
so.
they used.
I think there's some wisdom in that because a lot of Americans have a concern about President Biden's health. I mean, he may now already be one of the oldest persons to serve as president of the United States. Certainly, if he is elected in 2024 and serves out his term, he'll clearly
be 86 at the time that it ends. So he will be at the highest end.
Yeah. So anyway, we have another challenger in the Democratic race. I think that is potentially good because although Biden polls very, very well against Trump, the two presumptive frontrunners, he doesn't poll as well against, for example, DeSantis if he happens to jump to the fore. And of course, Ron DeSantis keeps, stepping on the weeds and he's his own worst enemy. But we'll see where that goes.
And what makes this so interesting, and we're going to go to some clips from a town hall he did last night, but he's often referred to as an outsider, and I find that almost just. It's kind of an oxymoron here to call a Kennedy an outsider,
right?
Because when your father is RFK and your name is RFK Jr., your last name is Kennedy, and to have the media referring to you as an outsider, I mean, it's a really unique set of circumstances. But so there was a News Nation town hall last night, and he made some really interesting points. So first, he talked about how he would handle immigration if he were president.
As president, I will expand legal immigration. I will make it easier, particularly for workers to come across on the H visas, and then and bring in and have an orderly system that benefits our country. Immigration is good for our country. This kind of immigration is unfair to everybody, and particularly to the immigrants that have been brought here. And then over the long term, the immigrants that have poured in from Latin America.
Interesting voice. I hadn't heard him speak before. I mean, I didn't expect that. You expect more of a presidential booming voice there. But
after you've seen him work out, exactly.
Yeah, maybe he was coming off of the workout. But he's got to deal with immigration. I mean, that's a big topic, and it's a topic that isn't particularly friendly to Democrats right now.
And so it's interesting because he also is trying to sort of cut into the Democrat vote that Biden has. Now, the thing that's interesting from a topic standpoint, where he's gained some notoriety and taken some hits, has been on his stance involving vaccines.
Yeah,
and this has been a fascinating issue because the anti-vaccination sort of movement has been obviously more on the right, at least the last couple of years, than on the left. And he's been very much anti-vax, and so he wants to talk about vaccines being tested. So let's go to that cut of him talking about his thoughts on vaccines.
You can't just look at, you can say that this product is going to prevent this particular disease, but you have to look at the long-term impacts. Vaccines, like other medicines, have injuries that have long diagnostic horizons and long incubation periods, that if you do not do long-term studies on placebo-controlled studies comparing vaccinated populations to unvaccinated populations.
Interesting that he even addresses vaccines, Derek, and I'm wondering what his agenda is. I mean, why he would address that. I mean, who he's appealing to there.
Yeah,
you sort of talked about it when you introduced it, but
within the Democrat Party, why? That's a great point. Why would he go there? Because that doesn't seem to be, by even addressing the issue, I don't think he picks up many votes.
Right, but you're right, because he talked about immigration earlier. He talked about vaccines. He's talking big picture,
he's talking health.
Right.
And I think this goes back to your point. And one of the great things about KSL is you get corrected live. And I was just reminded by Senator Todd Weiler, who just texted me and reminded me that actually Biden he was the oldest president we have ever had in America on the day he was inaugurated.
Okay.
And so, I mean, the health and age issue
right
there, I mean, obviously this is something that RFK is moving towards.
Right.
I mean, he's trying to, I think, create this comparison.
Right. He even emphasized getting rid of vaccines altogether, or at least he talked about it.
We can't just trust them. if they say it's a vaccine, we all trust it. We need to have actual science on it. And I think that's all I say. I don't want to get rid of vaccines. If you want to take a vaccine, you should be able to do it. We need good science, and that's all I've asked for.
Yeah, again, Derek, talking about vaccines as a Democrat and really being somewhat critical or at least circumspect about the necessity, talking about long-term impacts. Maybe we don't need them. I mean, we learned so much after the pandemic, after 2020. I mean, you think about, we were sitting in these chairs, or at least weren't invited to sit in these chairs 3 years ago because you couldn't get close to a mic. You had to wear gloves. I mean, we've come so far. And I think we have to, as a nation, look back on that and say, we may not have handled that as well as we could have. On the other hand, we probably didn't have as many deaths as we could have. I mean, the vaccines, I've certainly had my share. And I've had COVID 3 times, by the way. but apparently the vaccines made it less painful than it could have been.
Well, and as a side note, for those of you who are listening to these clips of RFK Jr., he has what's a disease called spasmodic dysphonia, which affects the voice or the vocal cords, and so that's why his voice sounds the way it does. So for those of you listening, I mean, like you were mentioning, Greg, It does sound a little bit different. That's what it, that's what he has. But what's really interesting here is the fact that he is viewed favorably in a recent poll. 49% of respondents, unfavorably 30%, leaving him with a net rating of 19 points. And this is a survey done just a couple of weeks ago. And Biden has a negative 9-point favorability rating. So the reality is, I mean, he's not.
And those are not just Democrats. That's an across the board.
And so he is definitely cutting into sort of Biden's support, but not at a place where, I think Senate President Biden is overly concerned, but clearly looking at, this potential challenger. And so now President Biden is faced with that sort of awkward dilemma of, do I address this at all? Do I say anything? Because if I do that, then I give him legitimacy. But if I don't, I'm sort of ignoring the fact that here's a guy who's polling in the double digits in my own party. And so he's now gotten a little bit of a catch-22.
Right, and it's funny, Robert F. Kennedy, we're talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s jump into the Democratic presidential race. He even talked about the fact that he's getting support from people, not just Democrats.
I'm proud that President Trump likes me, even though I don't agree with him on most of his issues. Because I don't want to alienate people. I want to bring people together. I'm proud that all these people like me and that I have independent supporters and Democratic supporters, and that I'm able to bring a lot of people. Every Democrat says, I want to end the polarization. But how do you do that without talking to people who don't agree with you? How do you do that without appealing to people?
I'm proud that Donald Trump likes me. I mean,
but
and
his
then he uses the
explanation is
word
good,
support later, but he doesn't really put Trump like and support in the same sentence.
Well, but the way I think he couched it is music to my ears, because I'd love, I'm distressed at the level of discord and lack of civility that we have in the political arena. And so, I like national figures talking about how do we remedy that. I mean, because our last president certainly didn't do that. I don't know that the current president's doing much either. And so I think RFK Jr. sees this as an opportunity for people who have similar concerns about civility, and he's moving down that track. So we'll see if it works.
Right, and we'll see where we are after the break when we come back, talking with our Speaker of the House.
Dave and Dujanovic. Before Dave and Debbie get started each day, this station is all news all morning.
And later today, we follow up on those stories as you drive home.
Get important news all morning and all afternoon.
Here on KSL News Radio.
Summer celebrations are almost here. You can light off your own fireworks until 11 p.m. on the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th, midnight on the 4th. And the fireworks stands are open. Even if it's green, it can still burn. Don't burn down Utah. And come here for updates on safety and restrictions. KSL News Radio, your summertime fun companion for news.
Everything's changing so fast these days, and that's a great thing. Back in my day, we were lucky if we could get one video to load on a desktop computer, but now there's the Xfinity 10G network. That means the fastest internet with faster speeds rolling out all the time, and internet that can power a house full of devices with ultra-low lag. So one person streams a movie from their room, another can play video games in the basement, while another TikToks in the kitchen. It's the next generation 10G network only from Xfinity. The future starts now. Through September 21st, new customers can get 1.2 gigabit internet with unlimited internet data and Wi-Fi equipment included. It's all just $25 a month for 2 years with no annual contract when you add Xfinity Mobile with unlimited data at regular rates. Go to Xfinity.com/10G, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today. Requires paperless billing and auto pay with stored bank account. Restrictions apply. Taxes and fees extra. Xfinity Mobile requires Xfinity Internet. After promo, regular rates apply to internet service and Wi-Fi equipment. Actual speeds vary.
Martin's Collision Repair. 50,000 cars repaired and counting. Just check Martin's 5-star online reviews.
Juliana posted, they were incredibly polite. They kept me updated on the status of the repairs. Outstanding service, really good quality.
Hi, I'm Tiago Martins. Check Martin's Facebook page or martinscollision.com for your 5-star Martins experience. On State Street in Norham and in Salem, we work with all insurance companies. The right repair, the right paint, the right choice. Martin's Collision Repair.
Hey, summer's here, and it's only getting hotter. Get 0 down, 0 interest, and 0 payments for a year on a new day and night air conditioning system.
Don't put it off. Summer is here and it's hot. Have a new day and night air conditioner and furnace system installed with 0 down, 0 interest, and 0 payments for 12 months. Enjoy savings and a cool, comfortable home for a full year before you even have to make a payment. Go to dayandnightcomfort.com for a day and night elite dealer near you. The difference is day and night.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Staples has everything you need to help run your small business. Shipping supplies and services to help move orders out the door. Print and marketing services so you can print signs, banners, and presentations fast. And now during Staples Small Business Deal Days, you save 50% when you buy any combination of 5 or more boxes, mailers, and shipping tubes. Plus, find new deals for small business in-store every week. Keep your business running right and safe at Staples. Offer valid in-store, online order pickup, and Instacart. Exclusions apply. Not valid in Concord, New Hampshire location. Prices may vary. N71.
I'm Andy Farnsworth from KSL News Radio.
And I'm Kellyanne Halverson.
And we're hosts of KSL's Fan Effect podcast.
That's Fan Effect with an E.
We're excited to share with you our knowledge
and arguments
on everything pop culture and fandom, featuring movie and television reviews, pop culture deep dives into video games, cosplay, fandom events, and more. Listen regularly on your favorite podcast platform at KSLNewsRadio.com, KSLPodcasts.com, or on the KSL News Radio app.
And remember, that's Fan Effect with an E.
COVID-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
Managing today's uncertainty can be overwhelming. We crave security, and it's uncomfortable when we sense a lack of control over our lives. Develop a routine for a more balanced lifestyle with healthy habits and fun. Focus on what you can control, even if it's little things, like a before-bedtime ritual.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. First, Salt Lake City is trying something to make its streets safer. It's making some of its roads windier to get people to ease off the gas. Second, a major ruling on affirmative action from the Supreme Court released today. The court says colleges and universities must stop considering race in admissions. Third, the World Health Organization's Cancer Research Branch is going to declare aspartame as a possible carcinogen. Aspartame found in a lot of Coca-Cola diet sodas, Mars chewing gum, and some Snapple drinks. Right now, it's 71 degrees and partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Dave and Dujanovic on KSL News Radio.
Dave and Dujanovic.
Welcome back to David Dujanovic. I'm your fill-in host, Derek Brown, with KSL's legal analyst, Greg Skordas, joining me.
We've had a lot to cover already.
We
this
have,
morning,
and
Derek. I feel like we've been all over the world.
Well, there's been a lot going on from a Supreme Court standpoint,
right?
And so
a new
we've had a
Democratic
little bit of fun.
Presidential candidate, perhaps.
Exactly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring it local, bring it back here to Utah. We have with us the Utah Speaker of the House, Brad Wilson. And Brad is someone that I've actually known for many years because he served in the House since 2010, and he's been the Speaker for the last 4+ years and has done an amazing job. And so we're going to sort of talk about some of the things that are going on. But first of all, Speaker Wilson, want to talk about what is going on during this? Like, what does the legislature do during the summer?
It's good to be with both of you this morning.
Hey,
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Give us a sense. I mean, you guys are working 20 hours a day from January through March, and then you all have to go back to your regular lives because this is not a full-time job, obviously. So come, June, July, August, what is it that's going on?
Yeah. Well, the work of the state doesn't come to an end when the legislature wraps up, that's for sure. But it does take a different form. And what you'll see lawmakers spending their time on during the off season or the interim months between sessions is primarily getting ready for the next legislative session, figuring out what the big issues of the day are, what are the big topics that the state needs to be focusing in on, and getting the groundwork done and preparing for that. So you saw 2 weeks ago the legislature up at the Capitol in committee hearings and doing a lot of work to kind of get those engines fired up, and we're off to the races. There always are things that come up during the interim, and we deal with those as well. We do sometimes go into special session, and it's just the rhythm of how it works.
Well, and I've often said that even though we have a 45-day session, the reality is the legislature's working year-round. You're just voting 45 of those days.
Yeah. I mean, we really are fortunate in so many ways. We are one of the last states that has a true citizen legislature where you can't make a living being in the legislature. You have to have some other occupation. But make no mistake, these are public servants that are taking a lot of time out of every day to serve their districts and serve the state.
Speaker Wilson, I want to thank you personally because you seem to be always available for us on KSL. We have the hardest time getting some of our local politicians to join us, and you've just always been available. So I wanted to thank you first of all. But I want to focus in on a couple of things. One is an announcement from the administration, from the Biden administration, about an internet that sort of making internet much more available to everyone. And we, of course, live in a state where there are a lot of rural communities, a lot of areas in the state where maybe the internet isn't as accessible. Can you tell us what the legislature's plan is to do with some of the money we're about to receive from the administration to get this, what they call internet for all?
Yeah, well, it is an important issue. Utah is actually a step ahead of the rest of the country in many ways in regards to this, even for rural Utah. About 5 years ago, we really started putting a lot of effort and resources into getting internet across the state, and we've got plans to deal with this money as it rolls in as well. But for sure, we're in a pretty good spot, and we have such a strong economy here in Utah, but there are some rural parts of the state that don't have the economy we need them to, and the internet and internet access are going to be a big key to helping deal with that opportunity.
And so that seems like the great equalizer. If you can take some of these rural areas and ensure that they have high-speed internet, whether it's fiber optic or whatever it is, it seems like for even educationally, I mean, these kids, one of the reasons my kids had seamless, educational sort of opportunities during COVID was because we had high-speed internet. I guess if you're in an area of the state where that isn't the case, then you're at a disadvantage. And this would remedy that disadvantage to the rural parts of the states, right?
Yeah, it would. I mean, we're going to have to keep our eye on one thing, Derek and Greg. Oftentimes, these monies that come from Washington come with so many strings attached that it makes it not worth the effort of actually using that money. So that's something we'll be evaluating as we get deeper into this.
Speaker Wilson, I want to shift gears for a minute because this is something that is exciting to me and I didn't know about. But apparently, the Utah Department of Transportation is unveiling or has talked about a plan to connect Las Vegas, Boise, and Salt Lake via train. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a study. We're not ready to pull the trigger yet and start laying rail.
I wanted to go to Vegas this weekend. I got to wait for a year, Brett. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about where we are with that.
Taiwan. I was on a mission in Taiwan a couple of months ago, and with President Adams and a few other folks, and we traveled the equivalent of going from Salt Lake to Fillmore in about 45 minutes on a high-speed train.
Wow.
And it's amazing. We had our phones out. We were going 189 miles an hour on this train in Taiwan. And the fact of the matter is we're behind in this country in terms of that kind of transportation infrastructure. And if there's a place that could try to figure that out and could benefit from that, it would be Utah and the West. So we want to be on the leading edge of kind of looking into those opportunities. But it's going to take some time. And, of course, there's a lot of resources and money that are required to make these things happen. But it would be a game changer for this region, not just Utah, for this region, if we can get that kind of infrastructure in place.
And for those of you just joining us, we have with us on KSL Live the Speaker of the House here in Utah, Brad Wilson. And so, Speaker, tell us then, what are some of the other projects like that you're looking at? I know you've done, one of your emphases here in Utah has been making sure that our infrastructure is modernized, up to speed, well-funded. And, I mean, I'm certainly intrigued, as Greg is, with this possibility of a line from Boise down to Vegas. Any other sort of large-scale projects that you're looking at and have kind of got in your sights?
Well, at a high level, what we're trying to do right now is do the blocking and tackling really well. We generate about $1 billion a year through different revenue sources for transportation infrastructure. But the last 3 years in total, we've put over $5 billion into transportation infrastructure. We've added a bunch of additional state money into that funding because we know that as the fastest growing state in the country, we've got a lot of work to do to keep up with the growth of the state. And the other thing that we've just got to continue to work on and quite frankly get better at is thinking a little bit longer term in terms of how to plan for the growth of this state. People are not going to stop coming to Utah. The secret's out, and we've got to make sure that as a government, we are doing everything we can to make sure we keep the quality of life we have here as high as it is, and transportation's a big part of that.
Speaker Wilson, I have a question. We've only got about 30 seconds, but I'm still intrigued by the train idea. When you talk about long term, what kind of a term are we on, or do you even have that in your sights yet? Could we have is there a possibility that we'll have that in the next 5 years, 10 years?
Not 5. 10 seems a little aggressive, but I'm actually not the expert on that, Greg, but it's probably a decade plus based on the commitment that would take and the funding that would require.
All right. Thank you. We've had with us the Utah Speaker of the House, Brad Wilson. Thank you, Speaker Wilson, for joining us.
Thanks, gentlemen.
All right. Next up on KSL, we are going to have President Biden will be addressing us on the Supreme Court's decision. And so we will cut to that live when he begins speaking. So stay with us.
Afternoon, 10:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. KSL's top story this hour is national news. Millions will be taking the wheel this holiday weekend. Here's the best day to leave and the worst.
If you're hitting the road on Friday, you're not alone. Best bet, get out early. Heading out, the heaviest traffic between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m., says traffic data company NREX. Coming back Wednesday, July 5th, the worst traffic expected between 3 and 6 p.m. A little bit of a break if you're renting a car. You're paying an average of $47 per day. The travel site Hopper says that's down 25% from the same time last year. Dave Packer, ABC News.
Here in Utah, road traffic isn't expected to be so bad. UDOT is marking the end of an era, though, and maybe this will help the traffic. The department will celebrate the fact that the reconstruction of US 89 will finally be complete. The project has been ongoing since 2012 and has been considered one of UDOT's largest projects in the last decade. But UDOT's projects aren't wrapped. Among all their summer projects, they're catching up on pothole repairs.
During the spring, the asphalt plants are open. The weather's more conducive with putting down the hot hot patches, which are a more permanent solution. We're making a lot of progress on getting those roads that were affected by potholes into good shape.
UDOT's John Gleason says, though it's tough to keep up when we have such a wet, cold winter, it's because the repairs get popped right out of the road after they make them. Your money at this moment, the Dow up 280 to 34,133, the S&P up 18, the NASDAQ up 6. Coming up, we're keeping an eye out for President Biden and his opinion on the affirmative action decision. That's next. KSL News Time, 10:31.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Quarters. Just 25 cents. That's hardly anything, right? The retirement specialists at Capital Wealth Advisors see quarters a little differently. A quarter is a lot when it's a quarter of your retirement savings. Do you want to pay 25% or more in taxes during your retirement? Capital Wealth Advisors can create a plan to help address taxes in retirement. If the only time you think about taxes is when you file them, you do not have a tax strategy. But it's not too late to get one with the help from Capital Wealth Advisors. Act now to make sure you're not paying a quarter, dime, or even a penny more than you should. Call the team at Capital Wealth Advisors at 801-210-5500 to schedule your complimentary retirement tax analysis. A quarter saved is a quarter earned. Call 801-210-5500 now. That's 801-210-5500. Firm offers insurance services but may not give tax advice. Advisory services offered through Capital Wealth Advisors, LLC, a state of Utah registered investment advisor.
Imagine getting ahead of your irritable bowel syndrome with constipation or IBS-C by treating it with Linzess. Then you could start proactively managing your constipation with belly pain and get ahead of your symptoms. Talk to your doctor about Linzess, linaclotide. Linzess is a prescription medicine that treats IBS-C in adults. It's not a laxative. It's a once-daily pill that helps you get ahead of your symptoms. It's proven to help you have more frequent and complete bowel movements and helps relieve overall abdominal symptoms, belly pain, discomfort, and bloating. These symptoms were studied in combination, not individually.
Do not give Linzess to children less than 2. It may harm them. Do not take Linzess if you have a bowel blockage. Get immediate help if you develop unusual or severe stomach pain, especially with bloody or black stools. The most common side effect is diarrhea, sometimes severe. If it's severe, stop taking Linzess and call your doctor right away. Other side effects include gas, stomach area pain, and swelling.
Imagine, what could relief from IBS-C mean for you? Talk to your doctor and say yes to Linzess. Learn more at linzess.com or call 1-800-LINZESS.
Smart, connected, modern. Discover life-enhancing independent living services at Trio Orem. Joy isn't just for the young, it's for the young at heart. Trio's signature programs provide a unique approach to wellness, bringing living well and well-being to life. Trio is reimagining retirement to deliver delight in every detail. To learn more, contact Trio Orem at 801-434-8000 or visit treoorem.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. We've got Heather Kelly in the traffic center.
Things are looking great right now across the Wasatch Front. We're accident-free and no delays on the I-15 corridor throughout Utah, Salt Lake, Davis, or Weber counties. You still have orange barrels out on Legacy Parkway, both northbound and southbound between Woods Cross and Bountiful, and sometimes you see slowing in that area because of it, but otherwise everybody else is moving along nicely. Emergencies don't wait, and neither do the experts at Big Brothers Home Services. Available 24/7 for emergency plumbing, draining, cleaning backups, and leaks, because they do more. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. Thunderstorms in the mountains this afternoon on the last cool day before our first triple-digit day on Monday. Enjoy the heat for the 4th of July holiday when the weather appears to try and cool back down. Right now, it's 73 degrees and partly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Dave and Dujanovic.
Welcome back to Dave and Dujanovic. Here filling in this morning. This is Derek Brown and with my good friend and co-host and KSL's legal analyst, Greg Skordas. And as a legal analyst, there's been plenty to analyze this morning, hasn't there, Greg?
Oh, there has. And I think that one of the things, Derek, that everyone has been interested in today is how we have now addressed affirmative action in America. And we talked about it at the top of the show. We interviewed Professor Paul Cassell from the University of Utah. But for those of you that are just joining us or haven't been watching the Supreme Court this morning, there was an important case brought by a group called Students for Fair Admission against the University of North Carolina and Harvard University, a private and a public institution, claiming that their policies at those two universities were discriminatory in that they took race into consideration in their admissions, essentially affirmative action. And that's been challenged in America's courts for years, for decades, really, and it's still been on the books. But today, affirmative action, at least in terms of higher education, is seemingly out the window.
Exactly. And what's interesting, and by the way, we are waiting any moment now. President Biden will be speaking on this Supreme Court ruling and giving his opinion on it.
You notice that he's always late?
He's always late. He was supposed to speak, about 7 minutes ago?
Right, yeah.
And so you've got the major news outlets in the country all say any moment now,
Any moment, yeah.
and they're all waiting. But what's interesting is presidential candidates are now reacting. I mean, for instance, we have former President Donald Trump saying this is a great day for America. People with extraordinary ability and everything else necessary for success are finally being rewarded. You have other candidates like Vivek Ramaswamy who said, I'm glad the Supreme Court finally laid to rest one of the worst failed experiments in American history, affirmative action. You have Nikki Haley saying the Supreme Court reaffirmed those values today. She's referring to the value of freedom and opportunity. Picking winners and losers based on race is fundamentally wrong. So these are Republican candidates. Now, my guess, Greg, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I'm assuming President Biden's going to have a very different take on this opinion.
Right, and I'm surprised at something. We had it was just a blip, Derek, earlier about the public reaction to the opinion. And I don't know how we've already got poll numbers in, but apparently somebody's done a poll in the last 2 hours, and the number was surprising that I saw, and I may be wrong, but apparently 50%, the majority of those that voted thought it was bad policy. They disagreed with the opinion. I think 38% or something thought it was great. 50% against, and I guess 12% don't know how to decide, or maybe it's not an important issue to them. But I was surprised by that. I had always thought, Derek, that the weight of public opinion as it related to affirmative action was against it.
Well, and what's interesting is we had Professor Paul Cassell, he's a law professor at the University of Utah, on, who also was a federal judge, someone that you've appeared in front of before, Greg.
Times.
And so very capable legal scholar, someone who knows things inside and out. And he actually was on and gave us his first take on this ruling today.
I think there was sort of an air of inevitability about this. 25 years ago, or maybe just a little bit less, Justice O'Connor was saying, look, affirmative action hopefully will be a thing of the past in 25 years. And the Supreme Court today is essentially saying that that time has come, that affirmative action has been tried and found wanting. It really doesn't seem to have had any measurable effects, says the opinion. And I think that was to some degree forecasted by Justice O'Connor long ago.
It's interesting, though, Derek, that Justice O'Connor said that affirmative action will be a thing of the past in 20 or 25 years because we won't need it anymore. And Paul Cassell seems to echo that. Well, he didn't really say we don't need it. He just said it doesn't seem to be working. It doesn't seem to have affected anything. But the dissenting justices certainly thought we still needed it. And I think it looks like the majority of Americans think that it still has some value. So when Justice Sandra Day O'Connor said, it'll be a thing of the past, is because we don't. It's it won't even be an issue anymore.
Exactly, as opposed to it'll be a thing of the past because it's not legal.
Right.
And so it's interesting. The dissenting opinion starts by saying that the majority opinion, and I think the exact phrase was, is not based in either law or fact.
Right.
Which is, that's legal speak for, that's about as strong a language as you can get from a legal standpoint.
Right.
And
right.
so, it'll be interesting to see kind of what the impact is of this decision long term. But I think one of the key factors that Judge Cassell made the point of saying is that Harvard and UNC, who were the two schools that were the defendants here, used race as one of the primary, if not, sort of concluding factors in their admission process, as opposed to one of a group of many factors. And so he thinks that may be one of the reasons that we saw the death knell. But anyway, also Judge Cassell explained what today's decision said. So let's go to that clip.
And what today's decision says is, look, you can't sort of come up with a percentage of minority groups that you want to be represented in your entering class and then work backwards and fill those spots.
You know, and we've talked with other educators and a representative from the Utah House who was on the education committee who kept getting cut off from us about the effect that this would have on Utah's institutions. Here's what Paul Cassell said about that.
To bring it into our home state, both the University of Utah and Brigham Young University, to provide two prominent examples, will be working under exactly the same rules following today's opinion.
And that's because I asked him if there was a difference in terms of this opinion as it would relate to public versus private universities. Some people thought, because the two defendants in the lawsuit were Harvard and University of North Carolina, that there would be a different standard between the private university Harvard and the public University of Carolina. But the Supreme Court dismissed all of that and made the decision as it related to federal law and didn't sort of break down public, private, those kind of nuances.
Exactly. And then, Greg, you raised with him the point that I think is really interesting, that it's always interesting to analyze sort of what the court said about this past circumstance. But now, where are we going with this issue? And more specifically, for those of you wondering, how does this apply to affirmative action type programs outside of higher ed? Right? I mean, and Judge Cassell made the point of saying, like, if I were advising a large corporation that had a race-based criteria by which they hire individuals, I would be advising them not to do that. Because what you're likely to see, even though this case only applied really in its words to higher education, you can almost guarantee that there's going to be a defendant of a large, multinational corporation here in America that uses race as a primary characteristic for hiring, and they'll challenge that based on this Harvard case.
Right.
And, I mean, if the makeup of the court is the same at that point in time as it is now, they'll probably lose.
Another thing, Derek, that Paul Cassell said that surprised me a little bit, and I don't know that I necessarily agree, but he indicated that he thought that there would be litigation now brought in terms of, and I assume what he meant was students who are not admitted saying, hey, wait a minute, now you're still using race-based decisions in terms of admissions. I didn't get into your school. Maybe we need to revisit that. I thought this would sort of end some of the litigation that's been brought, but he said that we're going to see more litigation. At least that was the message I thought he was saying.
It's very possible, because if you're striving for some level of equality, I mean, the reality is you're always going to see instances of inequality. And so in any of those instances, that's certainly fertile ground for a lawsuit. And as you mentioned earlier, the plaintiffs here were a group of Asian students.
Right.
And so, I mean, in the past, we've always thought of affirmative action in the white versus black sort of arena, right? Caucasians versus, say, African Americans, and how, Caucasians have been advantaged at the expense of others. But really what this has kind of morphed through the years is, if you're an Asian student trying to get into one of these colleges,
right?
I mean, your ACT or SAT scores have to be like
off the charts.
You have to you have to academically walk on water, so to speak, to get in one of these schools. So the standard is higher if you're Asian in some senses, or the effect is than if you're Caucasian or Latino or African American. And so it really, I mean, that dynamic may be what has pushed this over the edge.
Right. When we come back after the break, and we're acting on the fly a little bit here, there was a Democratic convention last night. We'd really like to talk about that, but we're still waiting for President Biden, so I don't know how to tease our next segment, but it'll be one or the other. Stay with us. We're watching President Biden very closely to see when he takes the podium.
Dave and Dujanovic.
Hey, stay right here for more of Dave and Dujanovic.
And tomorrow morning, come back here for news, traffic updates, and reliable weather.
Join us to have a listen. Tim and Amanda.
Your morning companions for news.
Hey, Derek Overstreet here from the New Millennium Group, financial advisors in Utah. I've been helping people retire in the state of Utah for the last 20 years. The way we do that is we actually find out what is important to you. We create a step-by-step plan that takes into consideration your income, your debt, whether you want money from real estate, stock market, annuities, life insurance, whatever. If you want to deal with professionals, people that are fiduciaries and have a legal responsibility and obligation to do what's in your best interest, give my team a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Or go to my website, utahsfinancialplanner.com. If you'd like to retire 3 to 5 years before you thought it was possible, give my team a call right now. 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370.
Do you know how to tell if a clogged drain is something to worry about or not? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and I understand it's annoying and inconvenient, but sometimes a clogged drain can be a sign there's a more serious issue with your sewer main line. If the drains in the lowest level of your home aren't draining, or you flush a toilet and it comes up somewhere else like a shower or a floor drain, I'm urging you to look at this as more than just an annoyance. The last thing I want you to experience is a sewer backup. If you're a homeowner experiencing any of these issues, the first step would be to snake the line to see if it's just a blockage, which one of our drain techs can do for only $29. Yep, you heard that right. Any Hour Services will snake any drain line with normal access for only $29. Sinks, showers, tubs, toilets, floor drains, laundry drains, even that sewer main line that connects to the city. We'll snake any line for just $29. For help with your drain issues, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7700. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
At Intermountain Primary Children's Hospital, we made a bold promise to build the nation's model health system for children. Join us in realizing our vision for the future of pediatric care. So together, we can expand primary children's impact and ensure every child has access to the right care at the right place at the right time. For a century, Primary Children's has kept the child first and always. Help us continue to do so for the next 100 years. To get involved, visit primarypromise.org.
Breaking news on KSL News Radio. We are hearing President Biden speak on SCOTUS's latest ruling on affirmative action. Let's go live to him right now from the White House.
Freedom to decide how to build diverse student bodies and to meet their responsibility of opening doors of opportunity for every single American. In case after case, including recently, just as a few years ago in 2016, the court has affirmed and reaffirmed this view that colleges could use race not as a determinative factor for admission, but as one of the factors among many in deciding who to admit from a already qualified pool of applicants. Today, the court once again walked away from decades of precedent and as the dissent has made clear. The dissent states in today's decision, quote, rolls back decades of precedent and momentous progress, end of quote. I agree with that statement from the dissent. The court has effectively ended affirmative action in college admissions, and I strongly disagree with the court's decision. Because affirmative action is so misunderstood, I want to be clear, make sure everybody's clear about what the law has been and what it has not been until today. Many people wrongly believe that affirmative action allows unqualified students to be admitted ahead of qualified students. This is not how college admissions work. Rather, colleges set out standards for admission, and every student has to meet those standards. Then and only then, after first meeting the qualifications required by the school, do colleges look at other factors in addition to their grades, such as race. The way it works in practice is this. Colleges first establish a qualified pool of candidates based on meeting certain grade, test scores, and other criteria. Then and only then, it is from this pool of applicants, all of whom have already met the school standards, that the class is chosen after weighing a wide range of factors, among them being race. You know, I've always believed that one of the greatest strengths of America, you're tired of hearing me say it, is our diversity. But I believe that. If you have any doubt about this, just look at the United States military. The finest fighting force in the history of the world. It's been a model of diversity. and has not only made our nation better, stronger, but safer. I believe the same is true for our schools. I've always believed that the promise of America is big enough for everyone to succeed, and that every generation of Americans, we have benefited by opening the doors of opportunity just a little bit wider to include those who've been left behind. I believe our colleges are stronger when they are racially diverse. Our nation is stronger because we are tapping into the full range of talent in this nation. I also believe that while talent, creativity, and hard work are everywhere across this country, not equal opportunity. It is not everywhere across this country. We cannot let this decision be the last word. I want to emphasize, we cannot let this decision be the last word. While the court can render a decision, it cannot change what America stands for. America is an idea unique in the world, an idea of hope and opportunity, of possibilities, of giving everyone a fair shot, of leaving no one behind. We've never fully lived up to it, but we've never walked away from it either. We will not walk away from it now. We should never allow the country to walk away from the dream upon which it was founded. That opportunity is for everyone, not just a few. We need a new path forward, a path consistent with the law that protects diversity and expands opportunity. So today I want to offer some guidance to our nation's colleges as they review their admission systems after today's decision. Guidance that is consistent with today's decision. They should not abandon, let me say this again, they should not abandon their commitment to ensure student bodies of diverse backgrounds and experience that reflect all of America. What I propose for consideration is a new standard, where colleges take into account the adversity a student has overcome when selecting among qualified applicants. Let's be clear, under this new standard, just as was true under the earlier standard, students first have to be qualified applicants. They need the GPA and test scores to meet the school's standards. Once that test is met, then adversity should be considered, including students' lack of financial means, because we know too few students of low-income families, whether in big cities or rural communities, are getting an opportunity to go to college. When a poor kid, maybe the first in their family to go to college, gets the same grades and test scores as a wealthy kid, whose whole family's gone to the most elite colleges in the country and whose path has been a lot easier. Well, the kid who faced tougher challenges has demonstrated more grit, more determination, and that should be a factor that colleges should take into account in admissions, and many still do. It also means examining where the student grew up and went to high school. It means understanding the particular hardships that each individual student has faced in life, including racial discrimination that individuals have faced in their own lives. The court says, quote, nothing in this opinion should be construed as prohibiting universities from considering an application's discussion of how race has affected his or her life, but be it through discrimination or inspiration or otherwise, end of quote. Because the truth is, we all know it, discrimination still exists in America. Discrimination still exists in America. Discrimination still exists in America. Today's decision does not change that. It's a simple fact. If a student had to overcome adversity on their path to education, the college should recognize and value that. Our nation's colleges and universities should be engines of expanding opportunity through upward mobility. But today, too often, that's not the case. The statistics, one statistic, students from the top 1% of family incomes in America are 77 times more likely to get into elite college than one from the bottom 20% of family incomes. 77% greater opportunity. Today, for too many schools, the only people who benefit from the system are the wealthy and the well-connected. The odds have been stacked against working people for much too long. We need a higher education system that works for everyone, from Appalachia to Atlanta and to far beyond. We can and must do better, and we will. Today, I'm directing the Department of Education to analyze what practices help build a more inclusive and diverse student bodies and what practices hold that back. Practices like legacy admissions and other systems that expand privilege instead of opportunity. colleges and universities should continue their commitment to support, retain, and graduate diverse students and classes. And companies who are already realizing the value of diversity should not use this decision as an excuse to turn away from diversity either. We can't go backwards. I know today's court decision is a severe disappointment to so many people, including me. But we cannot let the decision be a permanent setback for the country. We need to keep an open door of opportunities. We need to remember that diversity is our strength. We have to find a way forward. We need to remember that the promise of America is big enough for everyone to succeed. That's the work of my administration, and I'm always going to fight for that. And I want to thank you all. And I know you've been told I have a helicopter out there waiting to go up to do an interview in New York. I'll be talking more about this, a live interview. But thank you very much, and we're going to have plenty of time to talk about this. But we're not going to let this break us. Thank you.
President Biden, the Congressional Black Caucus said the Supreme Court has thrown into question its own legitimacy. Is this a rogue court?
This is not a normal court.
Should there be term limits for the justices, sir?
Okay, thank you, Paul. Everyone, we're going to move to the hallway doors.
So,
all right.
He's dodging questions now and walking out the door. Is this a rogue court? Is that what I heard?
That was
question was.
That
and
was
he said
exactly.
What was his answer?
He said it as he was walking out, so
Yeah.
it was hard to decipher exactly what he was saying.
Right.
But I mean, nothing too surprising. I mean, in terms of his strong response, I mean, he did say America is an idea and we've never fully lived up to it. And then he said we shouldn't allow the country to walk away from the dream upon which it was founded. But I think it was interesting and smart of him to basically say, all right, this throws a lot of higher education institutions into disarray in terms of, I mean, the one thing, you and I as attorneys always want to advise our clients to know what to do. We like clarity. Even if we don't like the result, we like clarity. And so I think he then said, here's some guidance for college and universities based on this, that and what you can count on from me and my administration.
Yeah, and one of the factors he gave as a form of guidance is that colleges should take into account adversity a student has overcome. In other words, when you're considering factors, he said talk about your GPA, your test scores. Also think about the financial burdens that a student has had, and again, taking it one step further, any adversity that they've had to overcome. In other words, he's saying there may be a way to still get the result that we may be striving for without using the word race or without considering that specific factor as a factor in determining admissions.
And I see that almost in a way, he's kind of saying here's an end run around the court's decision.
Right.
Rather than considering race, consider the effect of racial discrimination. And he used the phrase, discrimination still exists in America, and he repeated it three times.
Right, yeah, right.
Which I found very interesting.
Yeah, well, that was President Joe Biden and his response. Not surprising, and we'll come back after the break.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
Good morning, 11 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. KSL's top story this hour is national news. The Supreme Court struck down affirmative action in college admissions in a 6-2 decision released this morning. President Biden reacting to the news just moments ago.
The court has effectively ended affirmative action in college admissions, and I strongly disagree with the court's decision.
University of Utah professor Paul Cassell told Dave and Dujanovic the opinion says a person's background can still be part of the admissions process, but race should not be the decisive factor.
And what today's decision says is, look, you can't sort of come up with a percentage of minority groups that you want to be represented in your entering class, and then work backwards and fill those spots.
President Biden called to protect the nation's diversity and called on the colleges and universities to do everything they can to maintain that diversity in their institutions. 3 men have been arrested and charged with insider trading over a deal to take over former President Trump's media business, Truth Social Public. The charges don't implicate the former president or anyone else directly involved in Truth Social, but the investigations have prevented the company from going public. The charges allege the men generated $22 million in illegal profits from selling their stock after the merger announcement. Your money at this moment, the Dow up 252 to 34,105, the S&P up 15, the NASDAQ down 10. Coming up, enjoy the last of the coolish weather. KSL Weather's next. KSL News Time, 11:01.
We have enough people running around Broadcast House at 4 in the morning to field a football team.
Producers, reporters, the traffic team, and us.
This is Tim and Amanda.
Join us each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
This could be the start of a break-in.
Stop. This is Simply Safe.
Or the end of one.
Police are on their way.
Introducing the latest innovation in home security. 24/7 LifeGuard protection, only from Simply Safe. Now, agents can see and speak to intruders through our new indoor camera to help stop crime in real time and for fast police response. Get 20% off any new system with Fast Protect monitoring at simplysafe.com/radio. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Guys, did you know your testosterone affects everything in your system, including how you feel and perform every day? Right now, Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City will check your testosterone for free. Knowing your T levels is the first step in understanding if you have low T. Your testosterone level impacts your energy, libido, sleep, weight, hair loss, mood, and even ED. Maintaining an appropriate T level can change your whole life. Most men start to see changes in their hormone levels in their 30s. Experience and results matter. So what are you waiting for? Get your T levels checked today by local, experienced, and trusted men's health experts. They've helped thousands of men since 2011. They're so confident they can help you, they even guarantee it. Call Revive today and schedule your free testosterone test, free exam, and free consultation. Call Revive Men's Health at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Don't miss July 4th savings now at Lowe's. Save up to an additional $1,000 on select major kitchen appliances. Plus, save up to $3,800 on select 4-piece Samsung kitchen suites. And save on your choice of a DeWalt 20-volt max brushless drill kit or impact driver kit. Just $99 each for a limited time. Lowe's knows home improvement. Valid through 7/5. Appliance savings vary based on purchase amount. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Exclusions apply. See Lowe's.com for details.
If you want a heating and air company that uses third-party verification of their work, that is one of the highest rated on both Google and Yelp, then call At Your Service Pros at 801-YOUR-PRO.
Some breaking news on KSL News Radio. We're learning this afternoon that Becky Edwards, a Republican hoping to snag Congressman Chris Stewart's soon-to-be empty seat, has gotten her needed signatures in to get on the ballot. Edwards needed 7,000 signatures from registered Republicans to make the ballot. Now the state elections office has to certify all of them before it's official. Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. We've got
Ricky Meese.
Ricky Meese. That's what I thought. Ricky Meese at the traffic center.
Well, for those who are traveling northbound I-15, we've had a busy drive, and that's from the point of the mountain all the way to Salt Lake City. And right now, there is an accident in that mix at 90th South. It's been moved out of traffic to the left shoulder. And the rest of your Salt Lake County freeways, no problems, but some unusual delays Not sure if it's debris, but UHP on the scene northbound I-215's westbound 4700 south, holding back traffic in Taylorsville. The Utah Symphony's Deer Valley Music Festival in Park City features Ben Folds, Leanne Rimes, the Beach Boys, and more. June 30th through August 4th in Park City at DeerValleyMusicFestival.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. We're going to see a warm-up start tomorrow, high at nearly 90, definitely in the 90s Saturday and Sunday, 100 on Monday. But right now, only 74 degrees and mostly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Dave and Dujanovic have inside sources.
All right, welcome back to Dave and Dujanovic here at the top of the hour. I am filling in today, Derek Brown, and with my good friend and co-host, Greg Skordas, who's KSL's legal analyst.
And speaking of inside sources, we have the inside source with us
The
today.
insidiest of sources,
Right.
as we say.
We have Boyd Matheson.
Boyd Matheson. So we have Skordas, Brown, and Matheson, which sounds like a law firm.
Which 2 out of 3 can qualify as a law firm.
Exactly. Well, we've had so many, legal opinions today with the Supreme Court. This has been a big day, hasn't it, Boyd?
It has. It really has. And I think there's so many interesting things that go beyond just the headline. And a lot of people are still trying to use this as one more way to divide the country. And I think it's important for us as we look at that really this should be a step towards less of that. But whenever we look at our differences as a way to drive division, it never ends well. And instead we have to look at the dignity and the diversity as something that's both divine and part of the strength of our democracy. And so I think there's a lot of conversations to be had beyond the headlines as it relates to the Supreme Court ruling, and a lot of that really pointing kind of towards the better path.
I love that. And I think it's important that we focus on that. And for a moment, let's focus on the 2 top Republican candidates, Trump and DeSantis. But there's so much talk about that people don't realize there's another choice. Someone that you've actually interviewed, someone that you know well. This is Tim Scott from South Carolina, who has actually been accused of being too optimistic. Which, how's that for a change of pace, right?
Yeah, and really interesting. He was accused of being too optimistic by former President Barack Obama.
Of all people.
Of all people.
So let's
on the issue of race as well. And so really interesting that Tim Scott, as an African-American who grew up in the South, he's got a very optimistic message. And on a day like today, it's a very interesting juxtaposition to a lot of the other commentary that's happening now.
Exactly. And so let's hear what he said about that.
I love our country because I had a miserable beginning. I started off on the wrong foot. My parents got divorced when I was 7 years old. We moved into my grandparents' house. My grandfather was born in 1921 in a very segregated South Carolina. But he believed back then what too many doubt right now. He believed in having stubborn faith. Faith in God, faith in yourself, and faith in what America could be. My family chose patriotism, not pity. We chose that this is the land of opportunity, not the land of oppression.
So as you listen to that, it is a very interesting thing, and you guys have been talking about this in the context of the Supreme Court ruling and President Biden just said it himself. Well, maybe we should factor in less about race and more about how much adversity did you come over.
Exactly. I mean,
Tim Scott did that.
He did, and I love the optimism. And sometimes I feel like politicians get a lot of mileage out of saying that the sky is falling, whether it may or may not. I just spent the last couple of weeks with my family volunteering in Zambia, of all places, and it was a fascinating experience to see a country where the kind of optimism we take for granted really doesn't exist. I mean, and it was a hard kind of emotional experience to work in these schools and that sort of thing. But then I come back to America and I see politicians talking about the sky falling and how things are so terrible. And it's kind of a rude awakening. And so I love the fresh optimism of someone like Tim Scott. Now, you've met him personally, haven't you?
Yeah, and had him on the show a number of times, and he is what he is. What you hear on the stump and in front of a TV camera is exactly the same as what he is behind closed doors or walking down the hall. And so he does have that positive thing, which makes him very likable. One of the interesting things we've been tracking is often we focus on kind of those top-line national poll numbers. And if you look at the Republican primary for president, you've got former President Trump and current governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, at the top of the polls by a significant number. But
we're
that's not what
talking
it's
about Tim Scott now a little bit, aren't we?
Yeah, and it's an interesting place.
Yeah, tell us about that. He's sort of his numbers are starting to increase in a way that I think people are starting to take notice of him.
Is that people liking him more or disliking the front runners more?
It could be a combination of both. But these are numbers that you don't hear a lot in the national conversation. And so you look at the top and who's your number one choice. But one of the fascinating things to watch is if you had to choose a second choice, who would you choose? And just in the last month, Tim Scott has catapulted 9 points higher Tim Scott is my second choice, and say, well, second isn't good enough. But this is a long campaign. If you go back over Republican presidential history, if you looked at this point in the race, you would have had people like Fred Thompson would have been the candidate. Hillary Clinton clearly would have been the candidate, hands down. And you can kind of go through all of those. And so Tim Scott's in this interesting place where people are starting to say, I don't know a lot about him, so he has a lot of upside stretch. There's still about 35% of the people out there who don't know enough about him. So he has good upside. But other people are saying, I like what I hear, and it feels right. It feels optimistic. It feels possible. And so if Ron DeSantis or former President Trump falter, or if they just duke it out and kind of pummel each other for the next 6 or 9 months, you could see not just a Tim Scott, but that could open a lane for Nikki Haley or someone else. And so, Derek, you've seen this play out in conventions where the second choice suddenly can be the first choice.
Exactly. Everyone's because the first choice can falter.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things I like about Tim Scott is his willingness to go right to people who disagree with him. And so for a guy who, claims to be optimistic, my question is, can he retain that optimism with people who disagree with him? And you probably remember a couple weeks ago, he went on The View.
Yeah.
So he's got 3 hosts there, none of whom like him, and they were ready to just eat him for lunch. And he did a fantastic job of talking about his optimism and saying, look, America's not perfect. It's an ideal, but we're getting better. It's a more perfect union, and we're trying to get more and more perfect. And what were your thoughts on his?
So that was
his
an interesting place for him to go in as a candidate. He had been called out by the host of The View as someone who didn't understand the Black American experience. Like, wait a minute.
Oops. Right.
Wait a minute.
Right.
And he went in with his typical positive attitude and focus and said, look, I'm not the exception. He says, yeah, there's been systemic racism. Absolutely. There's been all kinds of problems. No question about it. But the fact that it's in America means there's a chance. I'm a big Jackie Robinson fan. And Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball in 1947. And when he looked back at that, he said, yeah, I endured slurs and taunts and all kinds of awful, horrible things. And he said, and yet I knew I had a chance.
Right.
My fight had a chance, and the reason it had a chance was because my fight was taking place in a free society called the United States of America. And he said, I can look at my children in the eye, and I can tell them, you have a chance. No guarantee, but you have a chance. And, yeah, sometimes our steps have been a little faltering, but there is a chance. And I think that's the thing Tim Scott's trying to say. Hey, this is who we are as a country. Not perfect, lots of flaws, lots of big, hard discussions to have. But we can do this, and he's not just the exception.
Boyd, we've only got a minute left, but you have some personal exciting news. You're taking on a new role with KSL.
We're going to add something else to the plate.
I was going to ask you, are you adding or moving?
This is an addition.
Okay, so Inside Sources is going to continue.
Inside Sources every day
so
from 1 to 3.
You're not just adding to the plate. I think you're bringing on another plate.
New plate
entirely.
We're adding a
Tell
new
us
plate.
what that plate is.
So now everybody can look at Sunday morning, Sunday edition. Of course, Doug Wright hosted that for the last 5 years, and I'm going to step into that chair. So every Sunday morning at 9 a.m., we will step into the chair there, and we will bring really a combination of things. As we always try to do, we're going to try to divide the rage from the reason and elevate the conversation. We're going to bring national thought leaders here to the state of Utah to have crucial conversations, and we're going to showcase the Utah model out to the rest of the country as we showcase the things that are happening in a positive way here in the state. So it'll be a both inside out and outside in approach to kind of elevating those conversations.
And do you want to mention who you've got on this Sunday, who will be joining you?
Yeah, so this Sunday as we kick off the program, obviously a lot going on in Russia, and so we have the former United States ambassador to Russia, John Huntsman Jr. will be joining us in the studio. We also have a conversation everybody needs to listen to. Jonathan Rausch from Brookings Institution, who is an atheist, will make the case for faith and religion in democracy.
There
Fantastic.
we go. So you're moving to television.
Television as well.
Because you're nice
we're
looking.
adding it in.
Good for you.
Face for radio, but we're going to give it a shot.
There you go. Thanks for joining us, Boyd.
All right, thanks again.
And we'll look forward to hearing you on Inside Sources today. We'll be right back.
Dave and Dujanovic.
Did you know Utah has just one all-news station in the morning?
It's this one. Weekday mornings between 5 and 9.
Start your days with us. We are Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
Your morning companions for news.
Utah needs to replace Representative Chris Stewart.
In this special election, only one person can come out of convention, and that person is Celeste Malloy.
Now we know at least one Republican has made the ballot.
She did get the endorsement from her former boss, Congressman Chris Stewart. She called herself a political dark horse.
Now it's a foot race for a handful of other challengers to collect signatures and make the primary. The drop-dead date is Tuesday the 5th. We'll update the field all this week on KSL News Radio.
Don't miss America's Freedom Festival in Utah County, a celebration with a mission to teach the honor and patriotism of our great nation. Take in Utah's largest July 4th Grand Parade, Freedom Days in downtown Provo, Balloon Fest, and Colonial Fest in Orem, followed by the state's biggest fireworks show and concert, Alta Bank Stadium of Fire, featuring Journey. For information, visit freedomfestival.org. freedomfestival.org.
They say good things come to those who wait, but we both know the truth. If you want the good things in life, you've got to go out and get them. So if you've been dreaming of a Cadillac, don't wait. Head to Jerry Seiner Cadillac and get one for yourself. With their award-winning XT4, 5, and 6 models available on-site and the area's top selection of certified pre-owned Cadillacs, there's no need to wait to drive in luxury. Stop dreaming, start driving. Visit Jerry Seiner and experience the Seiner difference.
Men who have given up in their intimate life because of prostate issues, testicular cancer, or simply no ED treatments you've tried have worked. It's not the end. At Summit Men's Health, they have a customized approach for each individual patient to get results they desire and deserve. Stop wasting your time and money with treatments that don't work for most men, like Shockwave, Viagra, or the shots. Summit Men's Health guarantees results in your first visit, or you don't pay. Call Summit Men's Health today and get the spark back in your relationship. Summit Men's Health, 435-500-2790. They're so confident this will work for you, they promise if you don't get results on your first visit, they pay you $500 cash, no questions asked. Call Summit Men's Health today at 435-500-2790. That's 435-500-2790 to get the passion back in your love life.
Have you been waiting to buy a car until interest rates go down? I'm Josh Osborne with Volkswagen Southtown. With our rate cut sale, now there's no reason to wait.
Get 3.9 for 5 years at Volkswagen Southtown on any new car. And we have as low as 1.9 on used cars. Get the car you really want, like the Jetta, Tiguan, Taos, Atlas, or ID4 EV.
Save thousands in interest at Volkswagen Southtown, Utah's #1 Volkswagen dealer. Start shopping at VWSouthtown.com.
Claim since 2022. Financing through VCI on select models OAC. See dealer for details.
If you've got a honey-do list with electrical, plumbing, heating, or air conditioning projects on it, Any Hour Services can help. Call Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air. anyhourservices.com.
Mount Star Healthcare's Harriman Emergency Center is now open. Be seen fast at the Harriman ER located just off Mountain View Corridor and 134th South in Harriman.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. First, President Biden reacting to the Supreme Court's ruling on affirmative action this morning. The president called to protect the nation's diversity and the colleges and universities to do everything they can to maintain that diversity in their institutions. Second, we're learning this afternoon that Republican hopeful Becky Edwards has gotten in her needed signatures to get on the ballot in the special election for the 2nd Congressional District's impending vacancy. Edwards needed 7,000 signatures from registered Republicans to make the ballot. Now the state elections office has to certify all of them. Third, 3 men have been arrested and charged with insider trading over a deal to take former President Trump's media business, Truth Social, public. The charges don't implicate the former president or anyone else directly involved in Truth Social. 74 degrees and partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Dave and Dujanovic on KSL News Radio.
Dave and Dujanovic.
And welcome back to Dave and Dujanovic. I'm here with Derek Brown. My name is Greg Skordas, KSL legal analyst, and we've been talking about the Supreme Court. We've been talking about politics, and we now get the famous, world famous, and award-winning Lindsay Ertz in the studio today to talk to us about. You've been covering this, Lindsay, for a couple days, and it's just been interesting, this whole Celeste Malloy, whether she was a registered Republican, whether she was even voting at the time. And I don't know, is this a controversy anymore? Or what,
well,
what
you
did we
guys
learn?
tell me, because I've done a whole lot of work if nobody cares about this.
Well,
so.
I just to
No, you
point out,
have.
I don't think you're not just covering it. I think you broke this story here on KSL. You were the first one to sort of highlight
Yeah.
what's going on, and then this has since become, every day there's sort of a new development in this story.
Yeah, there really is. So the newest information, I obtained voter records from the Lieutenant Governor's office that show that Celeste Malloy's voter affiliation from 2016 until the present day, including the day she filed her declaration of candidacy with the Lieutenant Governor's office on June 12th, shows she was an affiliated member of the Utah Republican Party. Now, she was an inactive registered voter, but you can still be inactive and considered registered. She was on a list to be removed from Utah's voter rolls, but she wasn't actually removed from Utah's voter database, which means she was, albeit inactive, technically a registered Republican in Utah. I sent a grandma request to the state elections office, and if at any time between 2016 and the present, her voter affiliation had changed, my grandma request would have flagged it, and there was nothing there.
Okay, so for those who haven't been following all the good work you've done, back up just a second and help us understand, help our listeners understand, number one, who she is, number two, why this matters, and number three, what the outcome of this is likely to be, because this actually does matter. And interestingly, at the first post-convention sort of live interview that Celeste Malloy had was here in studio a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And we were still kind of getting information about this. But tell us now why this matters and why it's an important story.
Okay, sorry, I just got a text from the LG's office that I rolled about, but
and I saw the eye roll. So those of you listening didn't see the eye roll, but you might have heard the eye roll.
Your grandma request is in the trash.
No, it was off topic, but okay. Anyway, so Celeste Malloy was just nominated by the Republican delegates at their CD2 special convention. What was it, the 24th? Last Saturday in Delta, Utah. And so she becomes the party's chosen candidate to put on the ballot. The party gets to choose one, and then whoever else wants to gather signatures can do that. And so the party elected Celeste Malloy. Well, in the days after that, her eligibility and her voter registration came into question. And so that's when we got involved. And to be fair, it was brought up by some losing candidates and some delegates. And typically that group can be, throwing some conspiracy theories at times. But we felt it important that because this was access to a public ballot, we wanted to make sure we looked into this. And so she, after the convention, all these rumors just started swirling, and the Republican Party at this time, it matters because if she was not, the Republican Party's constitution says that in order for her to run through this convention process, she has to be a resident of Utah and affiliated with the party at the time she...
In order to be a candidate at the convention.
Which makes sense, right?
Sure.
You to say you can't be the party's nominee when you're not a member of the party.
Right. So she has to be a member of the party, but now all these questions are, what does it mean to be a member of the party, right, are coming up. And so she, according to the voter records that I have obtained, she is an affiliated member of the Republican Party and was on the day she filed, and the Lieutenant Governor's office records that I've obtained show that. And so the other question is, well, did she live in Utah at the time she filed? But the question is over quote unquote residency, and in in the Republican Party's constitution, they don't define what residency is. They don't say, okay, if you're a resident, you have to pay taxes in Utah. They just say if you're a resident of Utah. If you're, and so,
which is a pretty loose definition.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, do you intend to stay where you are? And you can go someplace else. And unless you affirmatively change your residency, you don't lose it,
and
right?
that's the state's definition of residency. Do you intend to live here permanently? Do you intend to have a permanent place of residence here? But for all intents and purposes, even if she was living in Virginia at the time, she intended to live here. So the Republican Party is likely saying to themselves, okay, she's a resident. She intended to, even if by the state's definition, she wasn't technically a resident. And so this is where the very nuance of the law is coming in. And it's not even the law, it's the Republican Party's constitutional language that says that. But then also whether or not she can get on the ballot. And it's the Constitution that dictates whether she can get on the ballot in terms of she just has to be an inhabitant of Utah at the time of the election, right? So it's not saying she has to lay her head down at night on the day she files her candidacy in Utah. She just has to be an inhabitant of Utah at the time of the election. The election hasn't even happened yet. It's in November.
Right. So Lindsay, were delegates and the sort of these other candidates that were upset, were they just getting bad information about her party affiliation or party registration?
No.
Because it sounds like maybe it was much ado about nothing.
Well, they weren't getting bad information. She didn't vote in 2020 and 2022, and so they saw that and said, okay, well, she was not registered with the party because she didn't vote in 2 elections, so she was an inactive voter. And they maybe assumed that that meant she was also an unaffiliated voter, but your affiliation is different than your registration. So you can still be a registered voter, you can still be an affiliated voter. You can still be registered and affiliated at the same time, and differently at the same time, too.
So she's sounding like a lawyer. I think we need to. Right. We were joking about this is the law firm of Skordas and Brown here in KSL Studios. Maybe it's Skordas, Brown, and Aritz this morning.
Derek, you're a lawyer and former chair of the Republican Party. Is it a requirement to be a registered Republican that you vote in the normal cycles?
Well,
I mean, if you miss a cycle or two, are you?
No,
out?
you're not.
You're
not ineligible. I think the problem is, and Lindsay's become our resident legal expert on this topic.
Yeah,
but
shouldn't be.
But if you don't vote in 2 presidential or 2 federal elections, then the state unaffiliates you.
No. The state doesn't unaffiliate you. They make you an inactive voter.
Okay.
Yeah.
They make you inactive, and if you're inactive, then technically you're not affiliated with the party.
No,
is that correct?
No, that's not true either. And that's where some of them misinformation
this is the gray area, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're inactive, you're still a registered voter. You're still on Utah's voter rolls.
So is this really, as Greg said, much ado about nothing?
Well, it's not much ado about nothing because it matters for access to a public election ballot. So
the question really is not so much the party at this point as the lieutenant governor, because she's the one that controls the access to the public ballot, right?
But the lieutenant governor's office verified her attestation to I am a member of the Republican Party. So Celeste Malone goes into the lieutenant governor's office and she says, I'm a member of the Republican Party, and the lieutenant governor's office says, yes, they are not required by law to check that. They caught it a few days later and said, not that you're not a member of the party, but your voter registration is inactive. You might want to get that activated.
And Lindsay, the lieutenant governor has sort of hinted that she's not taking this challenge on right now. They're still putting Celeste Malloy on the ballot for the Republican primary.
Well, first her name has to be submitted by the Republican Party, and it hasn't yet. So once her name's submitted, at least to my knowledge, I've been trying to get the people who can tell me that to tell me that, and they're not. But once her name is submitted to the state elections office, that's when the LG's office will either put her on the ballot or not, and they have said they will put her on the ballot. And so
if they get that.
And so where does this go? We've only got about 30 seconds here. Where does this go from here?
So where this goes is once the Republican Party signals that they believe that she was a resident of Utah at the time that she filed her declaration of candidacy, that's them saying that, and she gets on the ballot.
Let me ask you one other thing. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Maybe you don't know this. We're hearing in the last few minutes that Becky Edwards has reached her 7,000 signatures.
Well, I can't say
she's on the ballot.
I can't say she's reached them, but she submitted them to the Lieutenant Governor's office. So she says she has 7,000 signatures. I was with her at the Lieutenant Governor's office when she walked her box in. She believes she has about 80% verified. The elections office now has to go in and verify that she has enough. Meanwhile, she's still collecting, but she says she has them.
Great. Lindsay Ertz for KSL. And next up, we will have the Democrat nominee who was just nominated last night. So stay with us.
11:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. KSL's top story this hour: there will be at least 2 Republican candidates on the ballot for the special election for Congressional District 2. Becky Edwards says she's collected 7,000 signatures. KSL News Radio's Lindsay Ertz caught up with her while she was dropping them off at the Capitol.
What are those, Becky?
They are one of many boxes, verified Republican signatures to put my name on the Republican ballot.
How many do you have there?
Just over 7,000.
One other hopeful, Bruce Huff, says he's also close to getting enough signatures. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: NATO's chief is addressing the European Union leaders on recent rebellion in Russia.
The mutiny we saw at the weekend demonstrates that there are cracks and divisions within the Russian system.
Jens Stoltenberg says what happened are internal Russian matters and it's too early to draw any conclusions. Rio Tinto is betting $1 billion that Kennecott can fill the demand electric cars are requiring of copper. The money will fund a new underground mining project and a rebuild of its smelter. If all goes to plan, the mine will feed America's energy transition, and Rio Tinto can pocket another $1 billion in profit. Your money at this moment: the Dow up 247 to 34,100, the S&P up 15, the Nasdaq down 8. Coming up, the warm-up starts tomorrow. KSL Weather's next. KSL News Time, 11:31.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
Sometimes people will ask me, Tim, how do you have all the energy you have to do all the things you do? And I have to tell you, a part of it is that I lost 34 pounds, a year and a half ago, and I've kept it off all this time. And I think back to when I was heavier, I would be by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd be exhausted because we get up so early. But now I have afternoon energy, and I know it's because I'm not lugging around that 34 pounds that I had been for how many years. I did it on SOTA weight loss. SOTA stands for state of the art.
And you're going to have the energy to do more, which is then going to help keep that weight off. We've said it before, but imagine go to the gym, pick up 34 pounds of weights, and just walk around the gym for a while. It'll give you an idea of what you've been lugging around. My daughter lost 42 pounds, and she continues on the maintenance phase now. Find out how this company can help you or somebody in your family. Go to SOTAweightloss.com, spelled S-O-T-A. Think Tim and Amanda, because SOTA Weight Loss is state-of-the-art.
Getting close to retirement? Or have you retired? You've probably got a ton of stress-filled questions on your mind. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth. Getting a second opinion with an individualized investment plan is vital, and our fiduciary advisors do just that. Take it from this Trajan Wealth client.
It was just so pleasant, so comfortable. I think we had 7 different accounts, just stuff scattered all over the place. And then so we just started, here's this, move this. And he even explained it a couple different times. But if I have more questions, he said, just give us a call. And that's what I love. He's a phone call away. I'm glad I know these guys. Such a huge weight off my shoulder.
Imagine not second-guessing investments or monthly retirement income. That's the peace of mind you'll get from working with Trajan Wealth. Call 801-899-7600 today or visit TrajanWealth.com.
Actual client, no compensation, no conflicts. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
At KSL News Radio, we have a 30-year legacy of honoring Utah teachers, but we can't do it without your help. Please tell us about an important teacher in your life on the KSL Teacher Tribute Wall, presented by Cypress Credit Union. Each month, one lucky teacher wins a $500 gift card from Cypress Credit Union, a $250 gift card to Harmon's, plus season tickets to Hale Center Theater. Say thanks to your teacher today at kslnewsradio.com/teacher from Cypress Credit Union and KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's High Yield Savings Certificates. I know I have Ricky Meese this time.
Well, for those traveling the Salt Lake County freeways, we're looking at a pretty good drive. Now, in Utah County, we have an accident in American Fork, westbound Pioneer Crossing at about 10th West. It has been moved to the right shoulder. And in Salt Lake County, a crash reported at 5600 West, 700 South. Don't miss Wait Until Dark, a suspense-filled thriller by Frederick Knott at Hopebox Theater in Kaysville, running evenings Friday, Saturday, and Monday through July 1st. Ticket proceeds help cancer patients. Visit hopeboxtheater.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, it's a steady climb to 100 degrees, and it starts tomorrow. Sunny skies for the weekend, partly for the 4th of July and holiday and beyond. Right now, it's 76 degrees and mostly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Dave and Dujanovic.
Welcome back to David Dujanovic. I am your host for the day, Derek Brown, with my good friend and KSL's legal analyst, Greg Skordas. And we've had a humdinger of a legal morning, haven't we?
We have. It's been quite the morning with Supreme Court opinions coming out and listening to the president's comment about the Supreme Court opinion and just talking politics in general. And maybe to stay on politics, we had another convention last night. The Democrats held their convention for the replacement, who's going to sit for the Democratic candidate for Chris Stewart's 2nd Congressional District position. Sorry, I'm having a mouthful here. But they held their convention virtually, which
They did, because the Republicans did it in Delta, Utah.
Which it was actually sort of the center of that district.
Right. I mean, it seems
across,
odd, but it makes sense, because about half of the districts in southern Utah, the other half is up in the Davis County area.
It follows the western sort of part of the state. Anyway, out of that convention came State Senator Kathleen Reeby, a Democrat from Cottonwood Heights. And I don't know, this is maybe not surprising, but her numbers were huge, Derek. I mean, she won by... she only needed a plurality, I assume, but she got 85, almost 86% of the vote.
Exactly. And, I mean, the Republicans had, I think, 5 different rounds of voting.
Right.
And so the Democrat convention went very quickly. And we have with us on the line Senator Kathleen Reeby, the new nominee for the Democrat Party. Senator, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Kathleen, talk to us about the convention last night. I mean, it was a little bit different. You each had 5 minutes to speak. Then there was some voting, but there must have been a tremendous amount of work that you put in before you even got there to get 85% of the delegates to vote for you.
Well, we tried to call as many delegates as we could on the list. I've been working around the state trying to build capacity, so I felt like a lot of the delegates already knew me, and I was friendly with many of the people in Iron County, Washington County. And, I visited there a couple of times, and I went down there a couple of years ago to visit with them. So the work that I've been doing for years has really paid off for me to get support from most of the people around the state. So that was really helpful. And, it didn't cost me anything to run in our campaign. We had virtual meetings, and, I just heard that Celeste spent $20,000, and I spent basically nothing. And we're looking forward to having the Democratic Party united behind one candidate. My opponent that received the next highest numbers called me right after and said, whatever I can do to support you, I'm in. So I'm still real excited about the race and the cohesion behind the Democratic Party right now.
That's a little bit of a contrast with, I think this is a veiled comment about what's going on in the Republican Party. Do you want to mention that, Senator? Because your chair, Diane Lewis, I'll read the comment she made. She said, unlike the Republican Party, we are emerging from our convention united behind our nominee and ready to hit the ground running in the general election. So obviously she's talking about you and saying that the Democrat Party is 100% united behind you. So that's got to be a good feeling and perhaps a little bit of a contrast with what we're seeing on the other side of the aisle, isn't it?
Yeah, we all go through ups and downs, but it's nice the Democratic Party is where they need to be right now. We had some tumultuous experiences in the last couple of years. So, after all that turmoil, we kind of got together and we said, we're going to build alliances. We're going to build friendships. We're going to build relationships. like I said, I've been traveling all around the state trying to work with my delegates and trying to work with my different counties to make sure that we can all get our eye on the prize and stop fighting in between ourselves. That doesn't do anybody any good. So I feel really good for the work we did to get here, and I feel really proud of all the people that came together to work on this with me.
So, Kathleen, you're the candidate. You'll be on the ballot in November. The Republicans still have a primary coming up. And to you, just having been in this sort of position myself, that's kind of a two-edged sword. Because on the one hand, the Republicans are going to fight against each other. They're not going to focus on you at all, at least to get through the primary. And that certainly works in your favor. But on the other hand, that will be more in the news. They'll be more prominent. We'll be hearing more about the Republicans. How do you keep your name out there between now and November while the Republicans are fighting amongst themselves for I think the primary's in September?
Well, I don't know who's getting signatures, and I don't know if they've met the threshold yet. We have till July 5th, and I've heard that's been really a hard number to meet. And then we heard maybe there might be a writing campaign. So there's a lot of variables that I'm trying to absorb and navigate. It's nice to be in the news, but I guess some of the news coming out of the Republican Party isn't going to be great news. It's going to be maybe a little bit of fighting, some, mudslinging, and I don't need to be a part of that. I just really want to do the work for the people of Utah. I work really hard to make relationships in rural Utah. I've worked hard to get better jobs down there, to impact their education, to help their search and rescue. I've worked hard to learn the issues about federal lands and PILT. And so I don't really want to get involved in any mudslinging or fighting. So I'm ready to start working now, and I'll see who my opponent is. But, if some of that news is negative, I don't really need to be a part of it. And I think that'll do me, build me favors in the long run.
So when it comes down to November, we'll have the Republicans will have one nominee, and it will be either the Celeste, who is their party, the convention nominee, or one of two people is what it's looking like. We just heard a few moments ago that Becky Edwards is claiming to have the signatures she needs, and obviously we won't know until the Lieutenant Governor's office certifies those signatures. We've also heard that Bruce Huff may be collecting signatures. So it'll be one of those three candidates. And so I guess the big question is, you against one of those three candidates, handicap the race. Where do you think it ends?
Well, having males and females in the race as opposed to all females is a variable that changes the dynamic of the race considerably in my mind. I feel that I've been somebody who people can look at my record and they can see what I do and what I stand for. I really believe the working class, hard workers of Utah, school teachers, we need to get more representation. I go to school every day, I work. And, when we looked around for candidates, people really want someone who has a 9-to-5 job, shows up every day, works the hardest to put food on the table. I think some of these people might be out of touch, I live here in the state. I've not gone anywhere. I work with communities every day. So I think when you start looking at who you really want representing you and who is actually living the same life that you live, I would be one of the best candidates that you could vote for. I really do work to reach out to people and get to understand the situations that they're talking about. And it's not easy right now. A lot of families are struggling with health care in rurals. They're struggling with education in rurals. And they're struggling with, how to get good jobs. And so that's something that I've worked with the Committee for Higher Education to make sure that we're working towards giving opportunities to every kid and every family across the state.
And Senator, just a quick plug here. For those who don't know you or aren't familiar, give us really quickly kind of your background. You're obviously in the state Senate, and you're a well-known school teacher and educator. In the 30 to 45 seconds we've got left, do you want to just kind of give your background, what you've done, and I guess I would say why you as opposed to someone else?
Well, I'm in the minority, so I really have to work across the aisle, and I have to work hard, So trying to move the needle in the direction that I wanted to go for education, I've worked hard to pass bills and build education about the issues that I think are important. Search and rescue is a really expensive prospect out in our rural areas, so we're trying to get some money into those things. So, really working across the aisle, working hard to push the issues forward, educating people around me, getting eyes on things that maybe we'd be neglecting in the past. That's something that I feel like I've done a good job at. teaching school and being with the state school board, working to build committees that actually have more people involved and bringing transparency to issues so that people know that they're getting the representation they want and they're getting the policies that are best for them.
Kathleen Reby, thank you for joining us this morning, and best of luck to you in November.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Derek, I wanted to just follow up with something before we break, and that is that in order for the Democrats to have a viable candidate and to have a competitive candidate, they almost had to come out of that convention last night united behind one person.
Absolutely.
I mean,
no doubt.
they had to avoid a primary at virtually all costs, didn't they? Because it just cost too much money and too much divisiveness, and you don't get much of that. There's not a big pool of money anyway for the Democrats.
Right, and I think the Democrats are smart to do that because the reality is we're going to have at least 2, probably 3 Republican candidates who will proceed to sort of beat each other up until the middle of September.
Right.
And whoever emerges sort of, as they say, bloodied and victorious will be a weakened candidate against a fresh Democrat candidate.
Right. Who I think will run very well. Well, that was wonderful, and we will be back right after the break for our last segment.
Dave and Dujanovic.
Hi, it's Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
Why should you start your day with us?
We have decades of news experience between us.
And we take your trust seriously.
Come here for news tomorrow, 5 to 9.
On KSL.
This is Derek Miller speaking on business. Child care issues resulted in an estimated $1.36 billion loss annually for Utah's economy, which is why the Salt Lake Chamber and community partners developed a new resource called the Family Friendly Workplaces. Utah Community Builders Executive Director KB Catalano shares more.
We believe the private sector can positively impact Utah's workforce by addressing the intersectionality of childcare, employee wellness, employee retention, and upward mobility. Childcare is one of the biggest costs challenging families. Childcare providers and business owners also feel a burden to maintain access to childcare due to greater difficulty in finding staff, preventing employee turnover, and paying workers enough to help them meet financial demands. Leaving fewer options for families means higher economic costs for communities across Utah. Ultimately, it is up to businesses to think creatively about ways to build the childcare infrastructure that we need to help working parents keep working for their families. Our new guide helps businesses understand the needs of working parents, the childcare landscape in their communities, and available resources to create a strong and supported workplace culture.
Utah's working parents need business leaders who are willing to elevate corporate culture. Visit the Salt Lake Chamber website. I'm Derek Miller with the Salt Lake Chamber, speaking on business.
Do you have an IRA or 401k? It's natural to think of this as being your money, right? But remember, you still have to pay taxes when you withdraw this money in retirement. And you could be paying a lot more in taxes on these accounts than you know. A lot more. Learn the strategies that can help you reduce or eliminate your taxes in retirement. Don't miss a special edition of Retirement Solutions Radio this Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, right here on KSL News Radio 1027.
With our roots in northern Utah, Holy Cross Hospital has a legacy of caring to help every person be whole and healthy. Find us at 5 Holy Cross Hospital locations and more than 45 clinics along the Wasatch Front. Learn more at holycrossutah.org.
At Holy Cross Hospital, we're honored to carry the legacy of our namesake and equally honored to care for Northern Utah's vibrant communities. Find us at 5 Holy Cross Hospital locations and more than 45 clinics along the Wasatch Front. Learn more at holycrossutah.org.
Imagine it's the last ride, but your symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome with constipation, or IBS-C, are taking you for a ride. What should you do? Keep managing your constipation with belly pain the same old way? Or try getting ahead of your symptoms by talking to your doctor about treating it with Linzess, linaclotide. Linzess is a prescription medicine that treats IBS-C in adults. It's not a laxative. It's a once-daily pill that helps you get ahead of your symptoms. It's proven to help you have more frequent and complete bowel movements and helps relieve overall abdominal symptoms, belly pain, discomfort, and bloating. These symptoms were studied in combination, not individually.
Do not give Linzess to children less than 2. It may harm them. Do not take Linzess if you have a bowel blockage. Get immediate help if you develop unusual or severe stomach pain, especially with bloody or black stools. The most common side effect is diarrhea, sometimes severe. If it's severe, stop taking Linzess and call your doctor right right away. Other side effects include gas, stomach area pain, and swelling.
Imagine, what could relief from IBS-C mean for you? Talk to your doctor and say yes to Linzess. Learn more at linzess.com or call 1-800-LINZESS.
If you love to follow breaking news like we do, register for breaking news alerts by texting the Cyprus Credit Union KSL text line. Text the word news to 57500.
Email from school about the incident today.
Scary.
You know, teachers like me, parents, we don't always know as much as you guys do about what's going on with other kids.
Half the time, it's rumors.
Yeah, but if you're ever concerned about a friend who's having trouble with alcohol, prescription drugs, anything, you need to tell an adult, someone you know and trust. That can be hard, but speaking up about a problem is what helping a friend is all about.
For more information, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. First, it's looking more and more like there will be 2 Republicans on the ballot for the 2nd congressional special election. Vicki Edwards says she's collected 7,000 signatures. Now the state has to verify them all. Second, Rio Tinto is betting $1 million that Kennecott can fill the demand electric cars are requiring of copper. If it all goes to plan, the mine will feed America's energy transition, and Rio Tinto can pocket another $1 billion in profit. Third, top contenders for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination are cheering for the Supreme Court's ruling on affirmative action, while Democrats are booing it. 9 states had banned affirmative action back in 2022. Right now it's 76 degrees and mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to David Dujanovic on KSL News Radio.
David Dujanovic.
Welcome back to David Dujanovic with Derek Brown. I'm your host, Greg Skordas. And Derek, I was going to ask you this. We have what some people consider a 4-day weekend coming up. We've had people joining us earlier about fireworks and whether we're going to have those or not this weekend. And I know today's only Thursday, but it's never too early to plan the weekend. What are you going to do?
Oh, we're heading out to a more rural area of the state. Let's put it that way. We're going south, and we're gonna have some fun.
Good for you.
Down in the Garfield County area, and so it's.
I'll be in Wayne County.
You'll be in Wayne.
So
okay,
there
I'll
we
be
go.
in
Yeah,
Garfield. Yeah, it'll be fun. And the 5th or the 4th rather is Tuesday.
Right.
So it's a 4-day weekend or perhaps a 5-day weekend, depending on how this all shakes out.
Yeah, but if you travel down south in Utah, as you must, you take 89 or 15.
15.
Yeah. Okay. You get to this area between Utah and Juab counties where the road just seems to narrow, both going down on Friday and coming back on Sunday, and it's just painful. And for some reason, we're not dealing with that very well.
Well, and for anyone who's driven that on a holiday weekend,
right?
At least coming back, I mean, everybody knows where the pinch point is, right? It's right about Nephi,
right,
until you get to maybe Santaquin, and I don't know why that is because it's pretty much 2 lanes, and it stays 2 lanes, and it continues to be 2 lanes, and then it eventually opens up.
Right.
But you can count on it. So it'll be interesting to see if UDOT's able to address that at some point in the future to see why the buildup right there.
Sometimes I notice the part of the problem is it goes from 3 lanes to 2 lanes, and people don't merge at all well. And there are 3 pretty big hills between Nephi and the south part of Utah County, and it seems like some of the bigger rigs just struggle with those. And once you slow down on those hills, you're done. But anyway, I don't know that there's a solution to it. We usually go and just turn on the music and listen to KSL and just sort of chill while we're in traffic. But I've even tried to take 89 a few times, thinking that was a shortcut. And you avoid the traffic, but you have to go through a number of towns in between, which sort of slows you down. But luckily, we are joined this morning by John Gleason, who's going to tell us about what we can expect from UDOT and what we can expect from our roads. John, thank you for joining us this morning.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. We're a bit fortunate, I think, with where the holiday falls on Tuesday, and that means that people are traveling really pretty much throughout the weekend here. A lot of people are taking tomorrow off, and so they'll be leaving tonight Friday, and then coming back on Monday or Tuesday or even Wednesday. And so what that means is that this traffic is really spread out throughout the period of 4 or 5 days there. And so we're really not anticipating any major delays anywhere, with the possible exception of Friday evening. We could see up to 10 minutes of additional delay on I-15 northbound in Salt Lake County and Davis County. And then as people are going down to St. George or Las Vegas, Juab County, I-15 southbound near Nephi usually gets a little bogged up there too. About 10 minutes of delay there that we're anticipating.
John, I love you. It's not a 10-minute delay going down to Nephi. I mean, hopefully you're right, and I understand what you're talking about going north and south, and you're the man. You've been so kind to us on this show, but I'll tell you, Derek and I were talking before you joined us about some of that I-15 between Utah and Juab counties. It does get a little bogged down there for whatever reason. It seems to be that the lanes narrow, and then they come back to 2 lanes and down to 3 lanes.
That's right. You've got a little bit of a bottleneck right there, and that's really one of the areas that we've seen consistently over the last couple of years that really does experience those delays, especially on a holiday weekend.
So tell us a little bit about, from your standpoint, the construction hotspots. I mean, if there are places to avoid in terms of construction going on this weekend, where are those?
Well, fortunately, we're taking a break from most of our major road projects, for the Independence Day weekend. That's Friday through next Tuesday. But there are some areas where those traffic restrictions or travel restrictions are still going to be in place. US 40 just north of Heber City, eastbound 40 is going to be down to 1 lane north of Heber City near the Jordanelle Reservoir, and then down on I-15 in Nephi, where we're just kind of talking about here. All lanes are going to be open for the holiday, but if you're coming back on Wednesday, starting Wednesday, we're going to be picking up construction on a big project down there, repairing some of the pavement and working on some of the bridges out there as well. So it'll be down to 1 lane in both directions starting Wednesday.
John, I had a call this morning from my son who was trying to fly to Denver, and airlines are messed up. He couldn't get his flight. Instead, he's flying to Salt Lake and then driving from here. It seems like we may have an additional push of traffic on the roads because our airlines, through weather or just misjudgment by some of the airlines, are forcing people back on the highways. You've got to be ready for, and this is probably as big a weekend as we have during the year anyway, isn't it?
It's one of them. It's definitely one of them. Memorial Day, Labor Day. Those are some of the big travel holidays that we see on our roads. But that's why having the 4th come on Tuesday, I think it's going to spread the traffic out a little bit on our roads. But yes, I mean I'm actually flying out with my family on this weekend too, and it's one thing that we're aware of. The issue is that a lot of people have purchased their airline tickets well in advance, and so I'm not sure how many people are going to take your son's path and do that. If you can, then that may make sense for a lot of people, but a lot of people are unfortunately just going to be stuck.
You talked about the north-south corridors. How are we doing east-west? Like, for example, 70 and 80.
80. So one project that we're all well aware of here in the Valley is I-80 and I-215 in Salt Lake County, and we do have lanes that are going to remain shifted on I-80 between 13th East and 23rd East, and then the lanes are split on 215 from 33rd to 45th, and this is the big reconstruction project that we've had going on the last couple of years. We're expecting all lanes to be open by late this year, 2023. But this weekend, that is one area. Even though our crews aren't going to be out there working, you will have to plan ahead for those restrictions there.
John, when Derek and I hit milepost 222 this weekend in Juab County, we're going to be thinking about you.
Exactly.
Please do, and I hope you make it through without any delays, any more than 10 minutes, I should say.
Right. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your flight, John, and thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Thank you both.
Wow, Derek, we just had so much to cover today, and getting here early and reading the Supreme Court opinions as they're coming down. Joe Biden going live. I mean, this was a fun show.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks, Greg.
And join us again tomorrow on D2. It won't be Derek and Greg. It'll be, I don't know who's filling in tomorrow, but I think Dave and Debbie are out for the week. Thanks.